Chapter 517. Running into Old Friends in Foreign Land. Chapter 517. Running into Old Friends in Foreign Land. Reverie _ On the fourth day, Hunyo waited there. After Ling Han rolled his eyes, the little girl laughed loudly with her hands on her hips, dragging Ling Han for grilled meat. She had no consistency in doing things. A while ago, she said she would strive to cultivate, but after a few days, she began slacking off. What others couldn't accept was that her cultivation actually still increased so quickly. She broke through to the flower blossom tier without a sound, and her battle prowess was unpredictably strong. These days he rested peacefully and forgot all pressure, simply enjoying his parents' affection and the tender sentiments of the young beauties. Ling Han, however, gained surprising improvements on martial arts. The sword chi he grasped reached 19 flashes, a period of explosive growth. But the 20th flash was another hurdle, which would probably have him stuck for a while. Moreover, he also finally grasped the two bone patterns, one acquired from the old vicious mongoose, and the other from the unnameable beast king. The vicious mongoose's bone patterns were a supportive art, though even Ling Han didn't know whether it could be called an art per se. It was simply a spiritual pattern, but it could be attached onto a sword, greatly increasing the sword chi's destructive power. It had no offensive capacity at all in itself and could only be characterized as a supportive attribute. This was very practical, and Ling Han even felt that its effects surpassed the other bone patterns. The other was an art that could fire out a cold ice blade, but Ling Han already grasped the mystical power annihilating Dragon Star Arrow, which was relatively powerful as a long-distance attack. But thinking about it, annihilating Dragon Star Arrow needed accumulation for a certain amount of time before it could be fired, and it was actually an attack launched over extreme distances, while this cold ice blade was a medium to short-range attack, so it just so happened to be supplementary for it. Anyways, more techniques weren't a burden. Each art and skill might have a place where its uses could be displayed. Next, he was going to Middle State, and the mysterious 3,000 definitely couldn't be used recklessly there. Otherwise, if the old monsters of the Heaven's Sword sect were drawn out, it wouldn't be a laughing matter. Thus, he flipped through some skills and found a sword technique. The Desolate Hell Sword. Ling Han acquired it from an ancient site. It was said to be the legacy of a strange force called Ancient Monks. This set of sword techniques expiated men, beasts, and all people. It had a total of 8 styles. The first 7 styles were merciful, leaving one with a feeble thread of life, used mainly for defense, and only the last style was extremely ruthless, like becoming a demon. It was of course a heaven-grade skill, the only heaven-grade sword technique that Ling Han grasped. Thus, even though this sword technique was somewhat strange, Ling Han still decided to cultivate it. A heaven-grade skill was something where one had to grasp its intent during cultivation in order to connect with the martial intent and form a link between the preceding and following styles, fully unleashing the power of the technique. Thus, to fully grasp the Desolate Hell Sword, Ling Han needed to be compassionate for mankind when executing the first 7 styles, and at the last style he had to turn into the Azura Demon King of Avicii, cutting down all things. He practiced the sword technique and contemplated the ancestors' state of mind when creating this sword technique, deepening his understanding of the way of the sword much more. However, cultivating someone else's technique, no matter how strong it is still using someone else's invention. Each person has their own path, and even if it's the same path of a king, a heartless path, it couldn't possibly be completely the same. So, to be the strongest, I must create a technique of my own. Like Rain Emperor, who created Son of Heaven fist technique. Although it might not be the strongest fist technique, it was still the most suitable fist technique for Rain Emperor. As his tier increased, the fist technique's power would also increase, and at last reach expert mastery, depending on the heights Rain Emperor could go. In this life, since I'm focused on the sword, I'll create a sword technique that belongs to my own sword path, and it'll increase as my tier increases. I had this thought before, but haven't ever put it into practice. Since I've now advanced into the flower blossom tier, it should be brought on the daily schedule. Ling Han cultivated the desolate hell sword and deduced his sword path, accumulating his understanding in preparation for a day when a sudden enlightenment might bring him inspiration. It was not only him. After Liu Tong and the others experienced a moderate period, they then started to leap forward again. Although it wasn't as exaggerated as in his case, it was still faster than most people. Ling Han obviously attended to Ling Dongxing the most. After only 3 months, Ling Dongxing crossed into the spiritual ocean tier. Such speed was truly terrifying. Blindly pursuing higher cultivation wasn't good, as it was somewhat like pulling seedlings to help them grow. It would hurt a martial artist's roots, influencing their future potential. However, Ling Han had no other way, since his father wasn't young, and if he didn't reach the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier to leave enough to charge at the flower blossom tier, then Ling Dongxing would only have a mere 100 years of life. Finally having parents in this life and having the confidence to become a god, Ling Han obviously didn't want his parents' happy reunion to last only a few dozen years, so he had to at least get his parents to cross into the flower blossom tier. After he became a god, having the time to find divine medicine to refine it into a divine pill, he would make his parents become gods in a single step. The interaction with the 3 girls was more harmonious by the day, and although they didn't have very intimate contact, their feelings deepened by the day. Contrarily, Zhu Xianer didn't dare to let Ling Han hug her after that bulging bone, and even blushed after glancing at Ling Han's lower body, threateningly beautiful. That night, after Ling Han finished cultivating and rested on his bed, he soon let out a quiet, breathing sound. Even if he crossed into the flower blossom tier and transcended mortals, sleep was still the fastest and the best way to recover physical fatigue. Even if he didn't sleep for half a month, he could still be full of energy, but he would nonetheless sleep on schedule every night. However, that night was somewhat unquiet. Ling Han opened his eyes abruptly and discovered that the window moved a little as 2 people wielding swords wormed in. The moonlight was clear and distinct, reflecting the chilling glare on the blade. Thieves! Ling Han sneered inwardly. To steal from him were they seeking death? Just as he was about to attack, he was startled. With his eyesight, he could clearly perceive things even in the dark night, so he naturally saw how these 2 people looked. He actually recognized these 2 thieves. He snorted intentionally and sat up on the bed. Shwa! Shwa! 2 swords were mounted on his neck, and a girl's voice sounded. Don't move, or else I'll take your life. Sister, don't frighten him. What if this guy's skittish and screams out loud in fright? Another girl's voice sounded. This scene was truly seemingly familiar. You shut up, the elder sister reprimanded. The younger sister snorted, still unconvinced. She was quite reasonable. Ling Han laughed and said, Don't worry, my nerves are quite big. I won't scream. The sisters were startled. They had certainly seen people with big guts, but to this degree, it was truly rare. You're way too collected. Don't you know that 2 swords are mounted on your neck? Huh. At this time, a loud bang came from outside, and a powerful voice sounded. Those 2 inside, get the hell out. Chapter 518, Strange Mineshaft. Chapter 518, Strange Mineshaft. Reverie _ Ling Han sighed and said, Tell me who you guys tried to assassinate and failed again, provoking others to hunt you guys down. Huh. How did you know we're assassins? The younger sister said, surprised. You guys still haven't recognized my voice? Ling Han was speechless. Were these sisters even fit to be called assassins? The younger sister hurriedly lit up the oil lamp, swaying it before Ling Han's face, and couldn't help but shout, Mommy, as she pointed at Ling Han. She said, It's you. Why are you here? I've seen a ghost. These assassin sisters were obviously Lu Feng and Lu Ru'er, who failed to assassinate Su Kuexien and left with Yin Shuang. Thinking about it now, They were certainly from the fire country, but it was just too coincidental bumping into them in a country so big. Ling Han laughed and said, "No need to care about why I'm here. How do we take care of your matter?" "We have to trouble young Master Han again to hide us sisters," Lu Feng Er said with a smile. This youngster was so calm and collected, completely unlike a teen, making her feel an indescribable sense of safety. "TSK, we don't even know whom you offended and ran to such a remote town for refuge, yet you still want to protect us." Lu Ru'er was as before uncomfortable, without saying a few provoking words. Ling Han curled his lip and said, "Well, I'm truly sorry. Please go wherever you came from." "Cheap, I was just saying. Do you really have to be so serious?" Lu Ru'er pouted. "Seriously, whom did you guys offend this time?" Ling Han sighed. Lu Ru'er instantly looked self-satisfied and said, "We tried to assassinate Fire Country's significant minister, Na Jiyen." "WW what? What sort of weird name is that?" Ling Han interjected. "Na Jiyen, a dirty man actually named such a sissy name." Lu Ru'er seemed to have found mutual understanding with him. Her face filled with approval. "That's right, like I said, this person's name is terrible one." Lu Feng Er was speechless and said, "The name doesn't matter. The key is that Na Jian suddenly appeared in the recent half a year and became Fire Emperor's most highly regarded. He bewitched Fire Emperor to mine an extremely strange mine shaft. Every time the workers returned from mining, they'd die suddenly on the second day. However, Fire Emperor didn't give up and assembled manpower from all over the country, excavating that mine shaft. Whoever dared to disobey would be killed. Now, countless people in the country are frightened, so we're killing Na Jiyen to exterminate an evil for the country. Tisk, being assassins, you still get a feeling of nobility." Ling Han said with a smile, "Don't you look down on us. We do have 3 no-kills." Lu Ru'er said proudly, "Don't kill kids, don't kill the old, and don't kill those who do good." Ling Han nodded as he smiled and said, "And then what? You guys tried to assassinate Na Jiyen and ended up failing and being chased for 10,000 miles." Lu Ru'er pouted and said, "Can't you estimate us a bit grander? Like after we successfully assassinated him, then successfully broke away from the chasing soldiers?" What does he mean?" Lu Ru'er stuck her hands on her hips and appeared extremely discontent. "Huh." A heavy sound came from the outside. A house was probably torn down. That voice from earlier sounded again. "The Imperial Guard's handling affairs. We can react first and report later. If everyone in this town isn't at the town's east gate in 15 minutes, the rest will be killed." Ling Han nodded and said, "Looks like Na Jiyen certainly is quite spoiled. An assassination attempt was made on him, and he actually sortied the Imperial Guard to chase the culprit. Hung, there are 7 high-level spiritual ocean tier warriors chasing us. Thankfully, we were quick-witted, running away quickly." Lu Ru'er said proudly, "Young Master Han." Zhu Wujiu's voice sounded from outside the door. Ling Han pondered and said, "Dismiss and suitably teach those people a lesson, but no need to kill." "Yes." Zhu Wujiu accepted the orders and left. He was now at the 3rd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier and refined the heavenly luckstone. His battle prowess rocketed to 11 stars, and he definitely belonged to the elite in the Fire Country. Ling Han, however, sighed. With this disturbance, looks like the Ling family had to move again. These sisters truly caused nothing but trouble for him. Hey, your little attendant can settle those Imperial Guards outside. Those are high-level spiritual ocean tier warriors." Lu Ru'er said in disbelief. "Don't make a fuss." Ling Han pressed his hand in gesture and said thoughtlessly, "How's Yun Shuang?" "Unbelievably good. She's a famous entertainer in the Imperial City. Everyone is honored to listen to Lady Shuang play a piece of music. Countless people want to marry her." Lu Ru'er said and looked wickedly at Ling Han, hoping to see a disappointed expression. How could Ling Han possibly care about Yin Shuang? He only recalled her after seeing these sisters, and so asked thoughtlessly. In a short while, Zhu Wujiu returned and spoke by the door. Young Master Han, the matter's taken care of. Are there any other commands? Ling Han nodded and said, Go rest. Yes. Only then did Zhu Wujiu leave. The sisters' expressions were filled with shock. After a while, Lu Ru'er finally said, Hey, is your attendant Bulsh * Ting? Ling Han shrugged and said, Can you still hear the dog's bark? Lu Ru'er was first startled, then finally reacted to Ling Han calling the Imperial Guards as dogs, giggling involuntarily, but immediately covered her small mouth with her hands, and said, I really can't hear them any more. Lu Feng'er's expression was also filled with shock. Young Master Han, those are high-level spiritual ocean tier cultivators. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, The trouble's taken care of, you guys can leave now. May we never meet again. Sigh, encountering you guys is never a good thing. Pa, we aren't bearers of bad luck. Lu Ru'er's expression was full of annoyance, but immediately continued, Since your attendant is so impressive, why not lend him to us for a few days and help us kill that Na Jiyen? Ling Han sneered and said, You have the nerve to say such a thing? Being an assassin to your degree. That's truly embarrassing. TSK, we're exterminating evil for the people. Lu Ru'er grabbed onto Ling Han and said, Since you're now in the fire country and bumped into us as luck would have it, it means heaven's ordained so. You need to give it effort. Ling Han declined to comment, but it couldn't be denied that this matter was too coincidental. Of all the places the sisters could run, they ran into his place of seclusion. He stroked his chin. If Fire Emperor was bent on having his way, then no matter where the Ling family moved, they might suffer the imperial family's coercion to go dig those ores. Unless they left the Fire Country. However, what exactly were those mines that would make Fire Emperor act so crazily, personally destroying the basis of this country? Ling Han asked, Do you guys know what mine shaft that is? We don't know. We only know that strange ores can be dug out every day and sent to the imperial family. Lu Feng'er shook her head. A shred of curiosity welled up in Ling Han. Chapter 519, Going to the Imperial City. Chapter 519, Going to the Imperial City. Reverie _ For a person like Ling Han, once his curiosity was piqued, it couldn't be stopped. He certainly thought it strange. Those who entered the mineshaft, whether or not they'd ever cultivated before, or if their cultivation was high or low, would definitely die suddenly on the following day, as long they entered, unless one never came out. What sort of power was this? And what effects did the excavated ores have that would make Fire Emperor place such great importance on them, not hesitating to force the citizens to die to excavate it for him? He decided to take a trip to the Imperial City. With his cultivation of the flower blossom tier and battle prowess of 13 stars, who in the entire Rain country could pose a threat to him. Finding out that Ling Han was headed to the Imperial City, the sisters obviously exulted. But Ling Han didn't bring that powerful subordinate when only Hunyou followed. They were dumbfounded. What were you two going to do? Sightseeing? Young Master Han, will you bring your precious subordinate? Lu Feng'er suggested. That's right. That's the Imperial City. No shortage of the spiritual pedestal tier elites. And the royal family even has flower blossom tier elites keeping watch. Enough to put you in your place within a second. Lu Ru'er said impetuously. Hunyou can fight 10. Hunyou said, unconvinced. The sisters knew that Hunyou was somewhat freakish, but definitely didn't think that this little girl could compare with them, let alone a spiritual pedestal or flower blossom tier warrior. They urged Ling Han to bring Zhu Wujiu along. I said no need, Ling Han said smilingly. With a snap he said, let's go. The sisters were helpless and could only set out, believing that after Ling Han bumped into a nail, he would still return to bring Zhu Wu Jiu. At the worst, it was just making one more trip. The four set out, hastening towards the imperial city. For Ling Han, this was only a small trip. Hence, he didn't bring Liu Yutong and the others, believing that the matter would be settled within a few days. After a few days, they arrived at the imperial city. Ling Han learned about Na Zhiyan. He was an extremely mysterious person, suddenly appearing half a year ago, then becoming Fire Emperor's favorite, managing the excavation of the mine shaft. Originally, no one took it to heart, but once the excavation began, problems arose. The miners would die suddenly the second day after coming out. After flipping through historic records, they discovered that the mine shaft actually had problems long ago, so it was sealed up, yet it was reopened with Na Zhiyan's suggestion. No one knew exactly what was produced inside the mine shafts, but crimson red rocks were sent endlessly into the royal palace. Although large amounts of miners suddenly died every few days, drawing the repeated objections of the courtiers, Fire Emperor was bent on having his way. He definitely wouldn't seal the mine shaft, and instead assembled citizens all over the country to enter the mine shaft. First were convicts on death row, then normal convicts, and now those who were caught were sent right to the mine shaft. Those who didn't enter were executed on spot, making the people around the imperial city on edge, living in fear. This Na Zhiyan, who exactly is he, and what is he conspiring? Ling Han couldn't help but be curious, but he decided to first go see the mine shaft. Let's go. We'll bring you to see an old love first. Lu Ru air grabbed onto Ling Han, bringing him to see Yun Shuang Shuang. Yun Shuang Shuang was born at Cherishing Flower Pavilion, and so she also walked the old path in Fire Country. She bought an elegant manor in the imperial city and would entertain some nobility, collecting a considerable entry fee. However, don't think of getting intimate with her. She only sold her art and not her body. Her status was rising steadily, and countless people were willing to spend a great amount of money to hear her play a musical piece, verifying an old saying, "What could not be acquired was the best." Now, quite a few sons of nobility were going all out to marry this enchanting beauty, fighting openly and maneuvering covertly. All of them were generous, gifting a house today and gifting jewelry tomorrow. Yun Shuang Shuang's current possessions were definitely shocking. The four arrived at Yun Shuang Shuang's manor. It was built alongside a lake, the environment extremely graceful. Na Zhiyan might have made Fire Country on edge, but for high-level figures, their easy and comfortable lives weren't sent into disorder as they continued to lead a life of debauchery. No surprise, their long line was already in front of the manor's entrance. Shuang Yun's small manor didn't accept reservations. If you wanted to listen to Shuang Shuang sing, you had to come early to line up. However, Lady Shuang Shuang also had the habit of sleeping in and would open her doors to greet guests in the afternoon, stringing everyone along. Ling Han nodded. If Forget Not and Pill King Pavilion were handed to Yun Shuang Shuang for operation, maybe the business could still have been several times better. What are you guys doing? Line up. Know how to line up? Seeing Ling Han head straight for the entrance, everyone was in a bad mood. The sisters paid no heed and came to the entrance, taking out a black token and dangling it. The old servant at the entrance immediately let them in. Ling Han obviously held Hunyou's hand and followed inside. These made many people displeased and harbor suspicions. A young man entered Lady Shuang Shuang's manor, and a man with many women at that what good could possibly happen. What a beast, even bringing such a small lady. Young Master Han. Shortly after Ling Han entered the manor, Yun Shuang Shuang walked over hastily. She was covered in thin clothing and her hair was disheveled. Evidently she was sleeping, and after knowing Ling Han had come, she immediately ran out. Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "Long time no see." Yun Shuang Shuang hurriedly nodded, stirred up with tears in her beautiful eyes. For her, Ling Han was her savior who helped her selflessly without seeking reciprocation, unlike other people who targeted her beauty. Let's go. Hu Niu shook Ling Han's hand. Her jealousy was great as usual. Ling Han nodded and said to Yun Shuang, "You're doing well. Keep taking good care of yourself." Yun Shuang couldn't help but be disappointed and said, "Young Master Han won't stay for a while longer." "I'm occupied," Ling Han said with a smile, looked at the sisters and went on, "Regarding Najian's matter, I have my own plan. You guys do whatever you need to do. Else, if you're chased down once more, I won't intervene again." Tisk, saying it as if you're really impressive. Lu Ru stuck her tongue out. Ling Han obviously wouldn't argue with the likes of her, and left with Hu Niu to visit the mineshaft and find Najian. He would kill or cripple Najian if the man deserved and did not want to waste time here. An adult and a child left. Those people outside immediately glared over, appearing extremely unfriendly. "Stop!" A youngster jumped out, 23 or 24 years of age, with the 7th layer of the gushing spring tier, cultivation, placed in the desolate north. That was genius level. Ling Han sighed. Why did people always have to ask for trouble? "What's your relationship with Lady Shuang?" that youngster asked, his face full of jealousy. A man entered Lady Shuang's manor. Alone one Ling Han was the first such case. Although he'd only entered for a short while, and nothing could have happened at all, it still made these men outside burn with jealousy. "None of your business," Ling Han said in a terrible mood. "Step aside, don't ask for trouble." "How arrogant." That youngster sneered and pulled out the long sword at his hips, shaking it slightly. Its chilling glare was piercing. Daring to be disrespectful towards Bo family's descendant? Die! He brazenly attacked with his sword, venting personal hate under fake righteousness. The sword struck towards Ling Han's vital parts, evidently aiming to take Ling Han's life. Chapter 520, Bo family's 7th young master. Chapter 520, Bo family's 7th young master. Reverie _ Haha, that's Bo family's 7th young master, known for being domineering. After not seeing Lady Shuang for 3 consecutive days, Bo Yongfeng's mood was terrible to begin with. This guy's hit the muzzle. Bo family is one of the 7 great families in the imperial city, with a spiritual pedestal tier elite keeping watch. Even the royal family has to give some face, so what if they kill someone? It's over for this guy. Everyone discussed animatedly, delighting in Ling Han's misfortune. They were in a bad mood that Ling Han could enter Yun Shuang's manor by himself. They simply didn't have guts like Bo Yongfeng, daring to attack publicly. Xiu, a sword came. The chilling chi was like a sharp saber. Ling Han shook his head. He originally only wanted to teach the other party a lesson, but since this person attacked aiming to take his life, he obviously would show no mercy. With a casual flick of a finger, a forceful gust of wind was fired out, and with a piu, the sword that immediately reversed and pierced Bo Yongfeng's forehead, coming right out the other end. The head was pierced thoroughly, so the person was definitely dead. Bo Yongfeng looked blankly at Ling Han, as if unable to believe that he would die in such a way. 2 streams of blood tears flowed from his eyes as his body fell towards the ground, raising the dust off the ground. Instantly, all voices disappeared, and only the sound of heavy breathing was left. Bo Yongfeng definitely didn't count as an elite in the imperial city, but cultivation of the 7th layer of the gushing spring tier wasn't low either. Moreover, Ling Han was young, looking 18 to 19 years old, so how strong could he possibly be? However, as it happened, he killed Bo Yongfeng with a single finger. Bo Yongfeng, an outstanding figure amongst the younger generation in the Bo family. Although he pursued carnal pleasures, wasn't this normal for youngsters? Bo family had placed high expectations on this family member that was extremely likely to become a spiritual pedestal tier being. However, it was obviously all void now. Such great nerve, to kill even Bo family's young master. This thing was serious. Bo family's rage would shake the entire imperial city. In the manor on the balcony, Yun Shuang and the sisters were watching Ling Han leave, but after seeing this scene they were also shocked. With their small mouths open wide, this guy attacked too viciously, killing the person right away. This guy can stir up trouble better than me, Lu Ru'er muttered. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "Anyone else wants to stop me?" Everyone hurriedly shook their heads in unison. Amongst the younger generation, spiritual ocean tier experts hadn't appeared, so no one dared to make an enemy of Ling Han. Killing Bo Yongfeng in one move, everyone obviously assumed that Ling Han was a spiritual ocean tier expert. Based on his age, this was already an overestimation. "Let's go," Ling Han said to Hunyao. "Yes." Hunyao agreed in a clear and bright voice, following behind Ling Han. Everyone could only watch them go, and only after Ling Han left did they realize their backs were covered in cold sweat. They hurriedly dispersed in an uproar. Bo family's young master was killed, so they obviously had to spread the news out. Otherwise, if the murderer escaped, the Bo family might take their anger out on them. "Sister, I just realized, I actually can't see through this guy's cultivation," Lu Ru'er suddenly said. Lu Feng also nodded and said, "I'm already at the spiritual ocean tier, but I still can't see through young Master Han's cultivation. Could it be?" The sisters looked at each other and said simultaneously, "The spiritual pedestal tier!" "That's impossible. Young Master Han's only so old. 2 years ago, he was still just at the element gathering tier. How could he now be at the spiritual pedestal tier?" Yun Shuang said in disbelief. "That's right." The sisters shook their heads. This was certainly too ridiculous. "Aya, we have to go. Bo Yongfeng died here, and if the investigation leads to us, we're doomed." The Lu sisters left hastily. They were fugitives. Ling Han and Hunyao strolled about. Their next target was 15,000 meters east of the imperial city, the mineshaft which had been exploited thousands of years ago. It had some strange metal ores, but due to an ominous accident, the mineshaft had been sealed long ago. Only in the recent half a year was it reopened. Very soon, Ling Han discovered pursuers behind them, but he didn't pay attention to it. In the small fire country, no one could pose a threat to him. After exiting the city gates, he and Hunyao continued east, and immediately saw a crimson-red mist that covered the sky. It was impenetrable even with Ling Han's eyesight. Ling Han was slightly surprised. "There, very not good, not good." Hunyao shook her head and revealed a vigilant expression. Even Hunyao said so. Ling Han was even more shocked. Hunyao feared nothing in heaven or earth. At that time, she skipped and jumped about inside the demonic chi, but now she actually showed fear. Apparently, this mineshaft was truly something more than met the eye. Looks like he somewhat underestimated Na Jian. Clearly knowing that people died here every day, he was still bent on excavating. Could some treasure be buried within the mine? However, looking at the pervasive crimson chi, this probably wasn't a treasure, but an ominous thing instead. A greatly ominous thing. Even more so a reason to go see it. Ling Han nodded. His parents and family were all here. He was afraid that something similar to that of a 1,000-corpse sect conspiracy would happen, making the entire desolate north a land of the dead. The lurking perils had to be eliminated. "Niao want to enter the Black Tower first?" Ling Han asked. Hunyao bit on her finger, thinking, and said, "No need for now." In other words, when they really entered the mineshaft or stayed there for too long, even Hunyao would possibly not be able to endure it. Ling Han became even more vigilant, but fortunately, those who entered the mineshaft suddenly died only on the second day they came out. So, as long as it wasn't instant death, he could enter the Black Tower and invoke its power to resist whatever threat that would be. He and Hunyao walked towards the mineshaft, but more and more people tailed them and were becoming bolder, no longer in fear of being discovered by Ling Han. When they almost arrived at the mine shaft, 10 people caught up to them. "Halt!" A middle-aged man yelled loudly and caught up in a few large strides. His face was ashen and killing intent filled his gaze. He was Bo Wenlinbo Yongfeng's father and had the cultivation of the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. After being informed that his son was killed by someone, he immediately came out chasing. "Killed my son, and still want to walk away from it," he said, clenching his teeth. "So what do you want?" Ling Han said indifferently. "Out to kill," Bo Wenlin said fiercely. "A life for a life." Ling Han shook his head and said, "If you attack, then it'll be the death of father and son. I'll give you a chance. Leave now. If you attack me, then you'll be seeking your own death." He turned and continued to walk towards the mine shaft. Being glanced at by Ling Han, Bo Wenlin instantly felt a terrible chill well up inside his heart, not daring to attack. He clenched his fists and watched Ling Han go into the distance, involuntarily revealing a grim smile. Everyone knew that entering the mine meant certain death. Well, although he couldn't personally take revenge, the most important thing was the result. He stared at Ling Han to confirm that Ling Han entered the mine and didn't just pretend to do so, taking the chance to slip away. Chapter 521. Entering the Mine Shaft. Chapter 521. Entering the Mine Shaft. Reverie _ The mine shaft was heavily surrounded by guards, not to stop people from entering, but to prevent people from escaping. After knowing what this place was, who would run in on their own accord? Every day, many people were detained and escorted here, temporarily staying here. After the previous group of miners died, the new bunch would obviously be sent down. Those who refused to go down, immediately beheaded. Under the heavy pressure, even if they could only live for a few days, many people wanted to bet their luck maybe they would be an exception and not die. To prevent the escape of the miners who temporarily lived here, a tall wall was erected, piled up from heavy rocks. It definitely couldn't be dug through by normal people. It was like the Great Wall, reaching 65 meters and just as hard to leap over. Moreover, guards patrolled underneath the tall wall. Escaping was as hard as climbing the skies. Of course, this was all with regards to normal people. Ling Han and Hunyo leapt up, arriving on the other side of the tall wall. "Who are you guys?" a guard immediately asked as 7 spears pointed towards them simultaneously. "Let them in." Bo Wenlin appeared. He stood on the tall wall in the distance. Once Ling Han entered the mine shaft, he would help along the way. The enemy wanted to suicide, so he obviously wouldn't mind giving it a push. After all, he couldn't see through Ling Han, who gave him a sense of extreme danger. Thus, he didn't want to fend against Ling Han head-on. "Yes, Lord Bo," the guards replied at once. Their duty was to stop miners from escaping. Someone wanted to go in? No matter, they'd die the second day after coming out anyway. Ling Han surveyed the area. Ahead was a large-scale mine shaft in the open, with interlocked adits unearthing downwards, continuously, unfathomably deep. Even having dug so deep, water didn't come out from the bottom. Looking from here, not even a single miner could be seen. Apparently, they'd already entered the depths of the mine shaft. Threads of crimson-red gas rose up from within the mine shaft and stopped when they reached 3 to 1,000 to 2,000 meters up, forming a giant red cloud. Hunyo bared her teeth to reveal a fierce look, appearing quite anxious. Ling Han didn't dare to be careless, yet took large strides towards the mine shaft. When Ling Han's figure disappeared at the edge of the mine shaft, Bo Wenlin revealed a cold smile. Now Ling Han was dead for sure, unless he stayed inside the mine shaft his entire life. But was he able not to eat and drink? Ling Han entered the mining area. Underneath his feet was loosened soil. Crimson red soil wasn't a rare sight, but here it was ridiculously scarlet, as if dyed in blood. especially when there was red gas rising continuously, appearing extremely eerie. I sense an ill omen, Ling Han said. This was based on pure instinct. Yes. Hunyo nodded emphatically. The two continued to advance. They could fly physically, but didn't choose to do so. The soil and rocks here all gave Ling Han an extremely strange feeling. He picked up a few rocks and some soil to store it into the black tower, then took Hunyo inside as well. Small tower, can you see anything special about these things? Ling Han asked. Small tower appeared and said, Cursed soil. People who don't have a strong enough natal horoscope will die soon after contact. Cursed. Ling Han was astounded. He had never heard of this type of power. Could it be that cursing someone to die was not just in speech, but could truly make someone die? And natal horoscope, what was that? Curse is also a type of power derived from the Great Tao. It's ceaseless and can manifest itself in various ways, Small Tower said leisurely. So I'm also affected by the curse now? Ling Han asked. Yes, stepping on the cursed land, you obviously suffered from the curse, but your natal horoscope is very tough, so you won't die, at least you won't die from this amount. This level of cursed power is something I can easily neutralize, Small Tower said. And what's that natal horoscope? Ling Han asked again. Small Tower swayed a little and said, Why do you have so many questions? Ask when you don't know, this is a good habit, Ling Han said smilingly. Natal horoscope, destined at birth, is influencing your fate to a great degree, Small Tower said. In your two lives, your natal horoscopes are the same, making it possible to fuse two souls, and not making it just a simple possession. Elaborate. Ling Han suddenly became interested. I don't have the interest to satisfy your curiosity. Small Tower immediately became haughty. Although there isn't much cursed power contained in the soil, to reach such a degree simply from it overflowing a cursed tool or a person with special natal horoscope is definitely buried underneath the land, forming the cursed power. What about Hunyo? Would she be affected? Ling Han asked again. This little girl's natal horoscope is too special. I can't see through her if I don't use the power of origin source, Small Tower said dully. Ling Han finally dropped his worries and exited the black tower with Hunyo, continuing onwards. What Na Jian and Fire Emperor conspired? Could it be for the cursed tool within the mining area? No one would steal dead people, unless it was the Thousand Corpse sect. The two treaded on slightly wet land and walked downwards. It was like a bowl. The further out, the wider it was, and the further in, the narrower it was. As they ventured deeper, the surroundings became dimmer, and if it weren't for Ling Han and Hunyo's extraordinary eyesight, they'd probably be blind with open eyes. However, going down another stretch of the road, the flicker of torches could be seen. In such darkness, one couldn't possibly mine ores after all. Seeing Ling Han's carefree look, with a little girl on the side pulling on the hems of his clothes, a few miners revealed an expression of disbelief and began to doubt their eyes, wondering whether it was an illusion or not. Ling Han's gaze swept by. He only saw that these people's faces were numb all over. After they entered here, they were equivalent to dead men, so who would still be composed? Food! Food! When they saw the dried meat in Hunyo's hands, their gazes lit up as if they were travelers seeing an oasis in the desert. Rushing over, they looked like they were going to forcibly take it. Ling Han was amused. A few normal people wanted to rob him, and Hunyo. Hunyo was most protective of her food, and immediately revealed a vicious glare. They dared to rob her food. Ling Han pulled on Hunyo and said with a smile, "Want food?" "Sure, but answer a few questions." He waved his finger and immediately left a deep mark on a rock, frightening the miners into an immediate halt. Those people stared at the dried meat in Hunyo's hands, drooling as they asked, "What do you want to know?" "The situation here. Tell me all you guys know." Those people looked at each other and nodded, beginning to talk one after another. They were sent here 7 days ago and brought 2 days' worth of food and water into the mine. If they wanted to acquire more food, they could only do their best to mine ore and use the ores to exchange for food. However, the ores were very rare here, so they all looked hungry as wolves, almost cannibalizing each other. Ling Han found it strange and asked, "The people outside will actually replenish your food? How do they give it to you?" Chapter 522, Blood Red Ores. Chapter 522, Blood Red Ores. Reverie _. The miners explained one by one. Ling Han gave them food to dispel their misgivings as they told him everything he wanted to know. So, it turned out that one would die on the second day of leaving the mine shaft. That was right, but it didn't mean that one wouldn't die if one didn't leave. In here, some people would die suddenly after 3 to 4 days, and some people could drag on for 10 days to half a month, but without exception, all would die in the end. With a day of life, they would linger on whilst at death's door for 1 day. They still needed to struggle to fill their stomachs. The guards didn't dare to enter the mine shaft and could only take food to exchange for the ores they mined at the separation of the mining area, throwing back and forth. However, no one dared to hide the food in the mining area, since it would be robbed clean by others. They ate it immediately as they got it, and definitely wouldn't leave a single bit. Although this was a mine shaft, there weren't many blood red ores, so some people who had a tough life weren't killed by the curse but died of hunger and thirst. No one would think of eating their corpses, because the dead's meat was black, extremely toxic or something. Anyway, whoever ate it would die. Thus, other than the misdeed of some people eating others at first, it never happened again. Not everyone was doing their best to dig ores. Some people banded together, or those who thought they were strong enough, began the business of robbing. However, the people here died too quickly, and all gangs and elites would soon vanish into thin air. As Ling Han listened, he didn't quite know how to feel. "They're so pitiful." Hunyao said, "Never would have thought this little girl would pity others." Ling Han rubbed Hunyao's head and said, "Nyo's grown up, knowing to care for others. However, they can't steal Nyo's food to eat." Hunyao immediately defended her rights. Ling Han smiled faintly and said to those miners, "Did you guys dig up any ores? Give it to me, sell me a piece." He took out a bunch of food and water again. "I'll give it to you." "I'll also give it to you." "By mine." Those miners hurriedly crowded in, fumbling out blood-red rocks that were pathetically small. The largest one was only the size of a pinky. Fearing that Ling Han would be dissatisfied, they looked at him with hopeful eyes, fearing that he'd say no. Because Ling Han gave much more food than the guards outside did, and it was also much tastier. Ling Han had mixed feelings. It was only some food, yet it could make people so meek and subservient. He distributed the food to everyone and stored those ores, an extremely small amount that could all be held within a single grasp. He placed the ores in his hand and instantly felt the martial flower within his body aroused with an intense rapaciousness, wanting to devour and absorb these rocks, to be precise, a certain substance within the rocks. At this moment, 5 burly men came out from the mine roads at the bottom, and seeing the food in people's hands, they instantly revealed an expression of burning desire. Each one of them revealed a threatening look and yelled, "Hand over all the food!" A burly fellow pointed at Hunyao and said, "Brother Yang, there's also a little girl." "What, a girl?" Brother Yang saw Hunyao and instantly licked his lips. "I love these young chicks the most. Haha, I've held back in here for 10 days. Today, not only can I get a delicious meal, but also feel some pleasure." Ling Han sighed. Inside the mine shaft, the ugliness of human nature was enlarged infinitely, and passing a day without knowing whether tomorrow would come, whose evilness within wouldn't be unleashed. Anyway, if one didn't have many days to live, why not do as one pleased for once? This Brother Yang was obviously the typical case. However, this person's natal horoscope was truly tough. Staying in here for 10 days and not having his life taken away, This confirmed an old saying that bad guys lived for thousands of years. Seeing these 5 people, the miners all trembled in fear. These 5 had a notorious reputation. It was said that before the other miners came, the 5 were already tyrants here, but they could never die. The gods truly had no eyes. They had already fallen to such a degree and had to be bullied by these scums. Little beauty, brother will take you to have some fun. Brother Yang stared at Hunyeo, almost drooling out of his mouth. The gods won't take you, then I will. Ling Han snorted faintly and pointed out with a finger. Pooh! A hole opened in Brother Yang's head and penetrated all the way to the back of the head. Blood mixed with white-colored brains, splattering violently. Everyone was first startled, and then the 5 burly fellows immediately screamed. If one didn't personally hear it, it was truly hard to imagine that 4 burly men could actually let out such a womanish scream. They turned to run right away, knowing they bumped into a hard spot. All of you can stay. Ling Han flicked his fingers, and 4 flashes of sword chi fired out. Pooh! Piu! Piu! The 4 people instantly fell to the ground, thoroughly dead. The miners looked at Ling Han with gazes of reverence, and also filled with gratitude because once Ling Han showed his strength, they definitely would reply honestly. However, Ling Han chose to use food to exchange with them, evidently treating them as humans. So we're still human. Some spirit ignited with the miners' eyes, so they weren't walking corpses waiting for death to befall them. Ling Han saw this, and made up his mind to immediately communicate with the Fire Emperor and Najien, making them give up on the idea of excavating the mineshaft. Then he would store all the miners into the Black Tower, purify the curse on them, and then have them leave. They were just a few normal people, and couldn't possibly discover the secret of the Black Tower. They would only feel as if they slept, and then everyone would return to normal. With his mind set, Ling Han turned around. The martial, celestial flower within his body could no longer endure the intense craving to devour these ores. Ling Han tried to refine the smallest rock, and a strange power was instantly extracted from within the ore and entered his dantian, being absorbed by the martial, celestial flower. The vein-like patterns on the celestial flower radiated and raised a wave of red chi. The celestial flower grew slightly. The extent was truly pathetic, but Ling Han was sure that the martial celestial flower certainly grew a little. However, his bloodlust was also stimulated, giving him the urge to act violently. This was shocking. The martial celestial flower's growth couldn't be separated from one's understanding of martial arts without deepening martial comprehension. The celestial flower would never grow and bear fruit in the end, birthing a spiritual infant. Ling Han had the complete martial arts experience, so he naturally didn't need martial comprehension. But for others, martial comprehension was the most important thing after crossing into the flower blossom tier. These ores could let martial artists go around it. Inconceivable. If there were a bit more of these ores, then wouldn't a flower blossom tier, spiritual infant tier, and even a shattering void tier be easily achievable? Ling Han immediately stored the rest of the ores into the Black Tower and said, "Small tower, analyze it. What are these things?" Chapter 5:23 Criminals on the Death Row. Chapter 5:23 Criminals on the Death Row. It's an ordinary rock with a slight bit of source power. Small Tower very quickly transmitted a divine sense message to him. Ordinary. Ling Han was surprised. A rock that was capable of directly raising the martial cultivation of a flower blossoming tier cultivator. Could it actually be ordinary? If there was a countless number of these ordinary rocks, it was guaranteed that even a pig could advance to the shattering void tier. Even becoming an immortal might not be impossible. It would not be inappropriate to call them divine rocks, so how could they possibly be ordinary? Origin power. Ling Han shook his head. Why can't I sense that? Not origin power, but source power, Small Tower explained. Ling Han was startled and asked the same kind of source power in the primal chaos source rock. That's correct. But the amount of source power inside is pitifully little. I can't be bothered to absorb it. Small Tower declared in its sundra tone. Just hear what it was saying. Ling Han gritted his teeth. You did it deliberately, didn't you? Trying to infuriate him, right? He said. I won't mind if you get me some, the more the better. He did not need martial comprehension, but his parents did. If there was a large supply of this type of mineral rock, he was sure that Ling Dongxing and Yu Hongchang would be able to smoothly break through to the flower blossom tier. He suddenly understood. Why was the Fire Emperor willing to spare no expense to obtain these ores? That was because this could allow one, in a situation wherein they possessed no cultivation technique and did not have enough ability of comprehension, to complete the leap over the Dragon's Gate leading to transcendence from this mortal world. However, if that was the case, it would be a little difficult for him to persuade the Fire Emperor to stop, because this involved breaking through to the next major cultivation tier, which also meant the difference of an additional 200 years of lifespan. Without breaking through to the flower blossom tier, mortals would only possess a mere 100 years of lifespan. The Fire Emperor had used up at least half his lifespan, so stopping him from breaking through to the flower blossom tier would be equivalent to taking his life. He was sure that this emperor would definitely not be persuaded easily. Since he is not willing to listen to persuasion, then I can only beat him into submission, Ling Han thought very violently. These rocks also possess extremely large amounts of violent traits. If you absorb too much with your current cultivation level, you will definitely not be able to control it. You will experience a drastic change in character and become a wild man that only knows slaughter and bloodshed, Small Tower said. When Ling Han heard this, he immediately gave up the thought of bringing some of these mineral rocks for his parents and asked, even the Black Tower is unable to erase these emotions inside them. The hardest thing to grasp is human nature. Unless I erase all your memories completely, Small Tower suggested. Forget it. Ling Han hurriedly shook his head. He had absolutely no desire to erase his parents' memories and for them to become complete strangers. Furthermore, he had a lot of confidence that he could deliver his parents up to the flower blossom tier. With an additional 200 years of time, he should be able to enter into the realm of immortals and get an immortal alchemical pill for his parents to help them succeed instantly. Ling Han was still quite confident in his personal talent in alchemy. Ling Han decided to deal with Na Jian and the Fire Emperor first, then come back here to study this mine shaft and find out what exactly was buried inside. The two of them very quickly exited the mine shaft and began walking towards the city walls. Halt! The guards called out. The command they had received was not to allow anyone to leave this place. Bo Wenlin appeared as well, a cold smirk at the corners of his lips, and said, Young man, you are really acting recklessly. You even dared to enter into this mine shaft of death. Now, you only have half a day's time left to live. Ling Han smiled faintly. His natal horoscope was extremely tough. Unless he stayed in the mine shaft for a number of years, he would not be affected by the curse. Furthermore, even if he was, didn't he still have the Black Tower? This divine item had extraordinary skill in matters, like eliminating evil and curses. Since I only have half a day left, I should go and cause great havoc, he declared, putting on a pretense of madness. Bo Wenlin immediately looked wary. Previously, he had not made a move because he had sensed that Ling Han was not someone to be trifled with. And now this guy who was not to be trifled with only had less than half a day to life. Then that would be even more horrible. Who would be willing to risk their life against someone who was going to die? Young man, you are definitely going to die. I can't bother to drop down to your level. However, I will follow you and watch you die, he declared. Ling Han grinned and asked, Really? You will follow me wherever I go? You dare? Haha, is there any place in this world that I, Bo Wenlin, dare not go? Bo Wenlin laughed coldly. Then come, Ling Han said with a smile, striding forwards. He was heading in the direction of the imperial city, and Bo Wenlin stopped the guards here from pursuing. Otherwise, how would these people possibly be able to stop Ling Han? Ling Han was not walking very fast. He only entered the imperial city after close to half an hour had passed. Let's quickly go and watch quick. 2 female assassins have been arrested, and they are about to be beheaded at the eastern gate in a public display. He had just entered the city when he heard a passerby running around and announcing the news. He looked very excited and attracted a large number of people to follow him. Female assassins, and there were 2 of them. It couldn't be Lu Feng Er and her sister, right? Ling Han immediately changed course and headed towards the eastern gate as well. How had these 2 women compromised their identities and whereabouts and actually fallen into the hands of the imperial family? He sped up slightly, and in just a few minutes, he had arrived at the eastern gate. He saw a tall stage had been erected in a public square. There were 2 girls being held down on the executioner's block. Their hair hung loose, and there was no way to distinguish their appearance. But with how Ling Han was familiar with the air of these 2 girls, he could confirm that these were the Lu sisters. AI, were these 2 people really made out to be assassins? At the side, someone was announcing the crimes of these 2 girls. They had attempted to assassinate an important minister. Najian committed an offense against imperial authority, and now they were to be beheaded in public as a warning to the others. The move to behead these 2 beauties in public, furthermore one carried out with such expediency, was made probably because the Fire Emperor's forceful excavation of the mine shaft had caused seething discontent among the citizens. As a result, he deliberately chose to execute these 2 girls in such a public manner to suppress the whole nation, especially the rebellious feelings in the imperial city. Assassinate Na Jiyan? Pay. Then these 2 young girls must definitely be good people. The gods are blind. They actually did not allow that bastard to be killed. Instead, 2 good people will die. Shoo, be quiet. Don't you want to live anymore? The masses were embroiled in a furious discussion, and all expressed sympathy for Lu Feng Er and her sister, as well as their deep-seated hatred for Na Jiyan. Ling Han did not immediately move to save them. He wanted these 2 girls to learn to be more obedient, so that they would not be some assassins in future. They were absolutely not cut out for this profession. Bo Wenlin naturally followed him here. He could not help but look extremely surprised. This person who was about to die was still in the mood to watch another person's execution. Just how thick were his nerves? The time is up. Commence the execution. An executioner walked up the tall stage. His upper body was bare, and he held a gigantic broadsword in his hand. He took a drink of wine, then spat it all over the blade. Then he raised it high, and under the sun of dusk, a forlorn light was reflected from his blade. Lu Feng Er and her sister's cultivation had obviously been sealed off. For the majority of cultivators, if their cultivation was sealed, then they would not be able to circulate origin power to protect themselves. In that case, their defenses would actually not be much higher than an ordinary person's. This executioner was in the element gathering tier, and with a wave of his blade, one of the 2 sisters would definitely lose their head. Schwa! The broadsword slashed downwards. But the expected scene of a head falling to the ground and blood spurting everywhere did not appear. Instead, a young man had suddenly appeared on the tall stage, and holding onto the blade with a single hand. Chapter 524. Forcefully seizing the execution ground. Chapter 524. Forcefully seizing the execution ground. Who was that who actually planned to forcefully seize the execution ground? How dare you? One of the officials supervising the execution jumped out. He was in the spiritual ocean tier, and in a small place like Fire Country, he could definitely be considered a master. He glared furiously at Ling Han and said, "Where has this madman that would dare to be so outrageously bold come from?" Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "Under the command of His Excellency Bo Wenlin, please hold the execution." "Pooh! Not far off," Bo Wenlin immediately choked. This was an injustice, a colossal injustice. This brat was really reckless. Not only did he kill a member of the Bo clan, he actually planned to make bogus accusations of his victim as well. But this brat was destined to be a dead man. So what else did he dare not do? And what other reservations would he have left? Bo Wenlin, as a great master of the spiritual ocean tier, in addition to the reputation of the Bo clan, was unknown to none in the imperial city. Instantly, countless eyes swept over to focus on him. With their united actions, that official naturally spotted Bo Wenlin as well. He instantly erupted into a great rage and exclaimed, "Master Bo, you actually dared to command another to seize the execution ground by force. What a treasonous action this is! What the fuck?" Bo Wenlin hurriedly leaped out and said, "Master Go, please do not misunderstand. I don't know this brat at all. Master Bo, your words have truly made me sorrowful." Ling Han pretended to be sad. "Didn't you agree that you would become my sturdy support, and no matter what happened, you would be there to back me up?" "Master Bo, these are your precise words. Wherever I go, you would follow, isn't that right?" Bo Wenlin could not deny it at this moment. He had indeed said that wherever Ling Han went, he would dare follow. But with the way that Ling Han had simply picked out these words and repeated them, their meaning was completely different. He had been used to standing in a high position. How could he have possibly encountered this kind of situation in the past? He had actually turned dumb from his anger and did not know how he should refute this accusation. But in the eyes of others, this was obviously a tacit agreement. Hiss, Old Nine of the Bo clan is really brave that he dares to even seize the execution ground by force. Master Bo is really a good man. He knows that anyone who attempts to assassinate Najian are faithful officials and martyrs, and wanted to leave behind sparks for Fire Country. That's odd. When did Bo Wenlin make a turn like he's a completely different person, that he would actually do something like this? Some were praising Bo Wenlin, whereas others were expressing doubt. There was really too wide a disparity between his usual behavior and his actions now. Bo Wenlin was a master in the spiritual ocean tier, and thus naturally heard the whispers of the masses. Inwardly, he wanted to throw up blood. He was absolutely not that kind of man, all right? What business was it of his if commoners lived or died? It was only because Ling Han had killed his son that he had made a move to stand and oppose Ling Han. As a result, Ling Han had actually dug out such a gigantic pit for him to leap into. "Master Bo, my mission has been completed, so I'll hand things over to you now," Ling Han said, smiling, then said to the two girls, "Quickly thank Master Bo for his kindness in saving your lives." Lu Feng Heir and Lu Ru Heir's chains had been unlocked by Ling Han, and their cultivation was unsealed as well, so they recovered their cultivation. They were not the slightest bit dumb, and immediately cooperated with Ling Han's act, bowing daintily in Bo Wenlin's direction, and both saying at the same time, "Many thanks, Master Bo!" Right? Even if he jumped into the Yellow River, there would be no way to wash himself clean. Let's go. Ling Han stretched out a hand each and grabbed both girls, immediately fleeing. "Master Bo, we'll meet again in the usual place." "No way you are leaving." One of the supervising officials quickly moved. He stretched out his right hand to grab Ling Han's back. He was skilled in palm techniques, and with this move of his palm, tightly woven patterns flickered brightly. It was as if a tree demon had spread out its roots, clawing at Ling Han. In truth, a mere breath of air from Ling Han could easily kill that official. However, he used the ghostly immortal steps. His figure moved in a bizarre manner and easily dodged his attacker's palm strike. Then his figure sped up, and the farther he went, the faster he moved. Bo Wenlin hurriedly broke out into run in pursuit. He definitely had to detain Ling Han, or he would really be unable to clear his name. "Master Bo, you intend to flee as well," the supervising official sneered darkly. His figure made a sharp about-turn and delivered a palm strike in Bo Wenlin's direction. "Your sister." Bo Wenlin's nose was almost bent in his anger, and he exclaimed, Master Go, I was going to recapture those 3 escaping criminals. Hung. Why didn't I see Master Bo make a move just now, then? And now you are so proactive. Master Bo, you wouldn't be purposely stopping me from pursuing the criminals, would you? The supervising official asked coldly, his expression clearly saying that he had seen through Bo Wenlin's deception. Fuck your sister. You're the one stopping me now. Bo Wenlin could do nothing but make a move of his own. He had similar ability with that supervising official, so how could he simply allow the latter to attack him as he liked? However, with this move to defend himself, it was as if it was a confirmed fact that he was trying to assist Ling Han and the others in their flight, making the supervising official smirk repeatedly. This fuck asterisk, what the fuck? At this moment, there were 10,000 curse words streaming through his heart. Ling Han brought the 2 girls all the way outside the city, then tossed them away, and said, For assassins to fall low to the extent that you have, it's really enough. Just honestly find a man and marry him, then obediently stay at home to take care of your husbands and teach your children. Hung, it's all your fault. You were the one who caused others to misunderstand. In the end, the moment we left Yun Shuang's place, it led to a large number of people all gathering around us to ask this and that. As a result, trouble happened. Lu Ru'er declared defiantly. Ling Han rolled his eyes and asked, So this is my fault? Naturally. Lu Ru'er pushed all the blame onto Ling Han. Ling Han waved his hand and said, Fine, I won't argue with you too. In short, the 2 of you have to leave the Imperial City immediately. Then what about Na Jiyan? I will deal with him, Ling Han replied calmly. Are you sure you aren't merely boasting? Lu Ru'er's expression was filled with doubt. Ling Han humphed and said, If you 2 still won't leave, then I'll send you both back. I'm sure that Na Jiyan would extremely hope to see your 2 cut-off heads. We'll leave, all right? Lu Ru'er fumed. Many thanks for saving us again, young Master Han. Lu Feng-er was much more sensible. She bowed to Ling Han daintily, and forcefully pulled her younger sister into a bow as well. Thanks, Lu Ru'er said reluctantly. Ling Han nodded and said, In a few days at most, you 2 will hear the news of Na Jian's death. So just go with a peaceful heart for now. Yes. Lu Feng-er tugged Lu Ru'er along with her and left. Lu Ru'er, meanwhile, kept turning back around, as if she wanted to continue arguing with Ling Han. Sister, he is the son of the skies, and not someone we would be able to reach. Even if we force ourselves to reach up to him, we would only be scorched mercilessly. Lu Feng-er was aware of her sister's feelings. Don't look at how she was fighting so fiercely with Ling Han. In truth, she was simply low in emotional intelligence and did not know how to express her own feelings. Thus, she could only pester him endlessly in order to attract Ling Han's attention. Lu Ru'er turned her head back round, her face covered with traces of tears. Ling Han returned to the Imperial City and had not even reached the city's entrance, yet when he saw Bo Wenlin and that supervising official had joined forces and chased him all the way here. Who knew whether they had resolved the misunderstanding or otherwise? Hunyo did not make a sound all this while, but was in an extremely good mood at this moment because the 2 hateful women had left and she was able to monopolize Ling Han again. Brat, you actually dared to return? Bo Wenlin asked darkly. He was really about to be angered to death by Ling Han's actions. Ling Han smiled and asked, With Master Bo to back me up, what do I dare not do? Die. Bo Wenlin charged out. He definitely had to apprehend Ling Han personally to prove that he indeed had no relation with Ling Han. Chapter 5:25 Na Jiyan. Chapter 5:25 Na Jiyan. Master Bo, you are being naughty again. Ling Han laughed. Xiao Hunyo streaked out and slammed a direct punch into Bo Wenlin's lower abdomen. How terrifying was her battle prowess! added together with the tremendous advantage of 2 major cultivation tiers. It was naturally a doubtless crushing suppression. With a pung, Bo Wenlin became akin to a cooked lobster, his whole body arched. Ling Han deliberately heaved a sigh and asked, "Master Bo, why do you have to do this?" The execution official's eyes were so wide they were in danger of popping out. That was Bo Wenlin, someone whose cultivation and ability were on par with his. In Fire Country, Bo Wenlin was definitely a strong character, yet he was actually knocked over by a punch from a little wisp of a girl. This was a little too much, wasn't it? If he stepped up, wouldn't that be his fate as well? Hiss! Where had these 2 monsters come from? Ling Han smiled faintly at the execution official and asked, "Are you naughty or nice?" "Nice. I am very nice," the execution official quickly exclaimed. Hunyo was currently directing a ferocious look at him, which caused his heart to shiver. Ling Han laughed loudly and shot out a foot at Bo Wenlin, directly kicking him to the feet of the execution official and said, "Here, you can take him and report back to complete your mission." Report your sister. In the beginning, the execution official had only been extremely infuriated. But upon thinking deeper, what logic would there be for Old Nine of the Bo clan to align forces with convicted criminals? Therefore, he immediately believed in Bo Wenlin's explanation that he had absolutely no relation with Ling Han or the 2 female criminals. Bo Wenlin groaned miserably. Though that punch of Hunyo's had not taken his life, the little girl did not control her strength, either. The blow was enough to make him feel as if all his internal organs had flipped over, which was an incredibly terrible feeling. Now he could not even speak. The only thing he felt like doing now was to throw up. Ling Han waved Bo Wenlin off with a hand again and said, "Master Bo, didn't you say you'd follow me to the ends of the earth? Please do not be scared off." With a stride, he turned around and left. The execution official did not dare stop him. Instead, he quickly lifted up Bo Wenlin and followed closely behind as if he was Ling Han's lackey, which made him incredibly sullen. After traveling for a while, Bo Wenlin finally got his breath back and was capable of walking by himself. However, with every step he took, he could still feel a heart-wrenching agony in his lower abdomen. He pulled aside his robes to take a look and could see there was a bluish bruise on his lower abdomen. The center of the bruise was already beginning to turn black. Hiss! This little girl was really ruthless in her attack. The direction they're heading in is Na Jiyan's residence. Not good. Bo Wenlin and the execution official's facial expressions changed drastically. This was a very easy guess. Those 2 female criminals had been convicted with the crime of attempted assassination of Na Jiyan, and since Ling Han was in cohorts with them, it was extremely natural to deduce that he, too, had the idea to assassinate Na Jiyan. Na Jiyan, a popular subject of the current Fire Emperor who had overflowing power in his grasp. If they allowed Ling Han to kill Na Jiyan, the 2 of them, as related individuals, would definitely have to bear blame as well. Quickly go and inform all the officials. The 2 of them exchanged a look and hurriedly split ways to complete their respective tasks. Ling Han did not walk too quickly, as if he was giving them time to inform others. He walked slowly and unhurriedly, but still arrived at his destination 20+ minutes later. Na Jiyan's residence had originally belonged to an imperial prince, but this imperial prince was extremely unsatisfied with his position and secretly planned to seize power. In the end, he had not even begun his plans when he was completely suppressed by imperial might. This residence was naturally confiscated and had now been bestowed upon Na Jiyan, which showed how much the emperor favored him. Shwa! A troop of soldiers filed out from the main doors, all of them carrying various weapons, looking quite ferocious. A man who looked to be the captain of the troop strode out, a silver helmet on his head and a long sword hanging at his waist, which made him look majestic and imposing. This man was actually in the spiritual pedestal tier. "I am the great commander of the Internal Imperial Guard, Si Kong Zhen. How dare you, fiend? quickly surrender without resistance. He shouted loudly. Ling Han's gaze swept over the troop, and he smiled. Master Bo, did you not say that you had arranged everything for me, and all I have to do is to enter the residence and kill Najien? Why are things different than what we have previously planned? Bo Wenlin was so infuriated, he almost stumbled in his anger. When do you plan to stop defrauding me? But at this moment, one of the elites of the spiritual pedestal tier of his clan had already stepped out, so it was not his place to speak at all. Thus, he merely stood humbly and quietly behind that elite member of his clan. Fiend, don't you dare feign madness. Si Kong Zhen stared coldly at Ling Han, not daring to make a reckless move. He had already been informed that the little girl by Ling Han's side was capable of knocking Bo Wenlin down with a single punch, which was extremely bizarre. Therefore, he had no choice but to proceed with extreme caution. Ling Han smiled and said, I have come to converse with Najien, so why is there need for such a big parade of troops? Go and ask Najien to come out. If things can be settled peacefully, then all of us can still drink wine happily tonight. How could a nameless nobody be qualified to meet with Master Na? Si Kong Zhen asked icily. Ling Han sighed and said, These words are much too hurtful, and I really do not like hearing such. Hunyo, what do you think we should do? Beat them up. Hunyo waved her little fists in the air. We use might to enforce submission. What a violent little girl. Ling Han smiled and said, You all have heard it. We use might to enforce submission. Since Najien is not willing to come out, then we can only barge in and directly drag him out for negotiations. When he saw Ling Han step forward, planning to advance, Si Kong Zhen immediately stepped into his path. He directly drew his sword and delivered a slash in Ling Han's direction. He was an elite of the spiritual pedestal tier whose ability far exceeded Bo Wenlin and that execution official. As his slash advanced, not only did 4 flashes of sword chi form, there were also multiple flames dancing, making this attack look extremely terrifying. Nyo's little iron fist. Hunyo rushed out. Pung! One punch was enough to send Si Kongjin flying. Pooh! When they saw this scene, all of them choked. That was Si Kongjin they saw. He was an extreme elite in the 7th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and people stronger than him in the entire Fire Country could be counted on 10 fingers. But now he was actually sent flying by a single punch from a little girl. Who could believe such a thing was possible? Gods, was this little girl a monster? What cultivation level did she have to be at to be able to do something like that? Furthermore, this was only the kid. Ling Han had yet to make a move. Pa, 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 pa. Applause rang out as a white-robed man walked out of the residence. This man was tall and slender, and handsome to the point of being almost beautiful. It was as if his black locks were a spiritual snake and actually moved without any form of wind blowing. He looked at Ling Han, smiled, and said, "It is such a delight to have friends coming from afar. I am Najien. How should I address this friend?" Surprise flashed through Ling Han's eyes. This Najien was actually in the flower blossom tier. Strange, this was extremely strange. In the 9 nations of the desolate north, there was actually no true cultivator in the flower blossom tier. The so-called flower blossom tier cultivators were in truth simply in pseudo-flower blossom tier, and had only managed to enter this cultivation level with the support of power of the nation. They had exceeded mortality, but how powerful was their battle prowess, and how much their lifespan had increased was a different story. Aside from an overbearing, aggressive character like the Rain Emperor, Ling Han truly did not believe that there would be a genius in the 9 nations of the desolate north capable of taking that step into the true flower blossom tier without aid. But this Najien standing in front of him was genuinely in the flower blossom tier, and had definitely not accumulated such cultivation by depending on power of the nation. With such power, he actually came to the desolate north to be an important official. Ling Han instantly understood. Na Ji Yan's target definitely had to be that mine shaft. Laboriously scheming and spurring the Fire Emperor to reopen that fatal ancient mine, he naturally should not have been aiming for those mineral rocks that would cause madness. He probably was aiming for the cursed tool that had been sealed under the mine, wasn't he? Chapter 526. Using Violence to Enforce Submission. Chapter 526. Using Violence to Enforce Submission. Na Ji Yan, I am really curious. What could be buried underneath that mine shaft that could make a flower blossom tear cultivator like yourself not hesitate to become a favored minister, willing to put forward plans and ideas for a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator? Ling Han said, "Hiss." Immediately, everyone was astonished. Na Ji Yan was in the flower blossom tier? That couldn't be. That definitely was impossible. These words came out of the mouth of a young man in his late teens. So how could they possibly convince others? Meanwhile, Na Ji Yan smiled and said, "It is also my first time to see such a young person who is already in the flower blossom tier like yourself. I won't say that there will not be no other in future, but at least there has never been one before in history." Putong, this time a great number of people stumbled and fell onto the ground. Ling Han was in the flower blossom tier too. Were these two guys simply flattering each other endlessly? How old could this youngster be? At most 20 years old, right? In the desolate north, someone at this age had to be in the gushing spring tier at most. Moreover, how absolutely difficult was it to take the step into the flower blossom tier? Even if given 20 years' time, one might not even succeed. What more when this brat only looked to have lived that many years? However, Bowen Lin could feel a cold sensation rising deep within his here that remembered that his whole body became weak from a mere glare by Ling Han. That kind of power was absolutely strong to a terrifying extent. What if Ling Han really was in the flower blossom tier? His son's vengeance, forget it. This might bring ruin to the entire Bo clan. Ling Han laughed and said, "Master Na is merely amazed due to lack of experience. There may not be one as young as I in the flower blossom tier in this era, but that might not have been the case in the past. It is only that there has been a lapse in our history, and we lack a complete knowledge of matters that happened millennia ago." "You are right." Na Ji Yan nodded, then changed the subject as he said, "However, for such a young the flower blossom tier cultivator like yourself, I think that there is definitely no other who can compare to you in this world." "Nyo, he's looking down on you," Ling Han said to Hunyo, smiling. "Beat him up." With a flash, Hunyo's figure vanished from everyone's sight, and with a xiao, appeared right in front of Na Ji Yan, her little fists shooting towards him. She had never used any kind of martial arts technique. She would only use her fists to punch, her claws to tear, and her teeth to bite, and these three simple moves were enough for her. Na Ji Yan released a sudden grunt. He had not foreseen that Hunyo could move so quickly. No. He had not imagined at all that such a little girl was actually a cultivator, and furthermore, he could sense from this one move that the power behind her blow, no matter what, had to be at least at the level of the flower blossom tier. If he really was struck by such a punch, he might not die, but his D*** would probably burst. What else could happen? Hunyo was really too short, so if her punch landed, where do you think her fist would hit? Though Na Ji Yan looked beautiful, he was definitely not a female. How could he actually dare to allow Hunyo to punch that kind of place? He quickly waved a hand, and a wall of ice froze up in front of him. There were multiple unadorned, ancient characters flickering on the ice. This kind of pattern was really rarely seen. Ling Han was extremely curious. The patterns were a display of one's martial intent, and though most people had endless differences in their respective patterns, the principle was still the same. One could still trace another's pattern to its source. For example, in this plane, all cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques had been developed from over 100 different ancient arts. The corresponding similarities they shared could still be found. But Na Zhiyan's patterns were extremely unfamiliar. They definitely originated from an ancient art that was absolutely different from the norm. How strange! This man had strange origins, and his aims were also quite strange. Pum! Hunyo's fist landed solidly on the ice. Ka ka ka! Immediately, cracks appeared on the ice, then it shattered. However, it managed to help Na Zhiyan gain enough time to remove himself from danger. Yet, Hunyo continued an endless barrage of attacks, pursuing Na Zhiyan, so he could only retreat continuously away from her blows. One by one, walls of ice appeared and subsequently were shattered. One kept stepping back relentlessly, whereas the other pursued even faster. Eventually, it became a one-sided thrashing on Hunyo's part as she did not give her prey the slightest bit of opportunity to fight back. Na Zhiyan was finally enraged, and with a cold humph, the strange scene of a tide rising in the ocean actually appeared behind him. He opened his mouth suddenly, and Piyu spat out an arrow of water. Upon a closer look, there were similar ancient characters spread all over this arrow of water. This was no ordinary arrow of water, but one filled with destructive power, capable of becoming a threat to a flower blossom tear cultivator. Hunyo finally halted, then with an abrupt turn, narrowly dodged this attack. At the same time, this also gave Na Zhiyan enough time to finally get his bearings, and for the first time in this exchange, obtain an edge over her. Na Zhiyan's face was filled with absolute shock. He exclaimed, "How could this be? So young, and yet already in the flower blossom tier?" A flower blossom tier cultivator that had yet to reach his 20s was already enough of a shock that his eyeballs almost popped out of his head. What more Hunyo, who only looked to be about 5 or 6 years old? Even if she started cultivation when she was still in the womb, how could her cultivation reach this level? The others were practically about to pass out from shock. With this exchange of blows, the aura of the flower blossom tier was fully exposed, making fear and reverence rise up in all of their hearts. This was because flower blossom tier cultivators had completely discarded their mortality and ascended from the mortal world. Aside from those at the level of rulers in martial arts, this kind of aura would absolutely suppress everyone else. This time they had no choice but to believe the facts in front of them. Whether it was Na Zhiyan or Ling Han or even a 5 or 6-year-old little girl, they were all in the flower blossom tier. This was unnatural, absolutely unnatural. When had flower blossom tier become so cheap? All of a sudden, there were 3 such mighty cultivators, and moreover, 2 of them were still so young. Ling Han grinned and said, "Frog that sits at the bottom of a well, do you now know there will always be someone else better no matter how perfect things appear to be?" Hunyo bared her teeth at Na Zhiyan. She had yet to use her strongest weapon. Na Zhiyan still looked very astonished and asked, "Are you the excellent disciples of Heaven's Sword Sect or Cloud Phoenix Sect?" "Neither." Ling Han shook his head. "You don't have to guess our origins. I came only to say one thing. Immediately stop the excavation of the ancient mine shaft. I regret that I cannot comply with your wishes." Na Zhiyan shook his head as well. "Young man, no matter which party you come from, you must definitely not interfere in this matter. This is a word of advice from me. If not, your only path is death." "Oh, is it really so exciting?" Ling Han laughed loudly. "Then I want to play even more." Na Zhiyan's face was filled with displeasure, and he asked, "What do you think of my skill?" "Not that great. I will be able to subdue you in 3 moves." Ling Han tossed out casually. Na Zhiyan almost died from fury. Forcibly suppressing his anger, he said, "Where I come from, even if there aren't 100,000, there are at least 80,000 people at my level. And there is at least 10 or 20,000 people stronger than me." Hiss! The faces of those from Fire Country all twitched uncontrollably. What kind of terrifying party was at that flower blossom tier? Cultivators numbered 10,000. One had to understand. In the whole fire country, only the old emperor from 4 generations ago managed to break through to the flower blossom tier with the aid of power of the nation. Furthermore, the power of the nation of one country was only sufficient to produce one flower blossom tier cultivator. Moreover, there were even people stronger than flower blossom tier, and there was even as many as 10 or 20,000 of these terrifyingly powerful people. Too terrifying. What kind of party was that? Ling Han gave an indifferent "Oh," and said, "Then I'm really curious now. Which party did you come from?" That is none of your business. You need only know that if you stand against me, you will suffer a tragic end." Na Ji Yen said coldly, "Niao, tell me, are we people who have managed to grow so far by being scared?" Ling Han suddenly asked Hu Niao. "No." Hu Niao exclaimed, clearly, "Then if someone threatens us, what should we do?" Ling Han asked, "Beat him till he surrenders. Use violence to beat him into submission," Hu Niao declared with extreme ferocity. Chapter 527, Sea Race. Chapter 527, Sea Race. Ling Han looked at Na Jiyen and said with a smile, "Our motto is to use violence to enforce submission. If you don't submit, we'll beat you into submission." Na Jiyan's expression turned even colder, and he said, "Young man, don't be rash. If you do, you will fuck." He had not even finished his words when Ling Han already charged over. Ling Han leaped into the air and immediately aimed a kick at his face. As the saying went, in a fight, never aim for the face. And Ling Han not only wanted to hit Na Jiyan's face, he actually wanted to use his foot. Ling Han was really looking down on him too much. "Junior, you are too arrogant." Na Jiyen exclaimed in anger. He raised his hand and used a palm strike to parry the kick. 7 spikes of ice spread out. The icy air was powerful, and instantly the surrounding temperature dropped a few dozen degrees. Shards of ice formed in the air endlessly before falling onto the ground. There were simple patterns flickering on the icy spikes. They formed multiple characters, as if they had transformed these 7 spikes of ice into divine weapons. Na Jiyen smirked coldly. "Unless you are an expert in kicking techniques, if you use your weak area to attack what your opponent is strong in, then you're going to be in for a great deal of suffering." Pung! This kick landed solidly. The spikes of ice instantly shattered, becoming shards that danced in the air. Furthermore, it was as if Ling Han's foot had not been hindered at all and continued its course ruthlessly towards Na Jiyan's face. How could this be? Though Na Jiyan did not exclaim in shock, his face still held that astonished expression. He was too flabbergasted. How big of a power gap was there between the two of them that would result in such a one-sided situation? Pung! Before Na Jiyen knew it, Ling Han's foot landed mercilessly directly onto his face. Due to the powerful impact, Na Jiyen instantly collapsed onto the ground. His whole head was forcibly trampled into the limestone path, making him look like a headless monster. Hiss! That was too horrible. A grand and mighty flower blossom tier cultivator was actually thrashed so horribly. Pung! Pieces of rock flew, and Na Jiyen shot back up, his expression completely dark. In such a small, mundane place like the North region, he actually suffered such humiliation. This was practically enough to fill him with the urge to commit suicide. Thankfully, it was not witnessed by any members of his party, or he would really have no pride left to face them. Ju! Pung! He just said one word and immediately was knocked over by another kick from Ling Han. His head was once again buried in the limestone path. A hint of sympathy flashed over the faces of all the bystanders. In their eyes, flower blossom tier cultivators were a revered existence, as if they were gods. But a being like that was currently suffering so terribly now, having his head being repeatedly stepped on by another. Really, they didn't know what to say anymore. Fuck! Najian shot out of the ground for the second time. But like before, he merely said one word when he was once again stomped back into the ground by Ling Han's foot. 3 times, 5 times, 10 times. By the 10th time, Na Zhiyan finally understood that he was completely no match for Ling Han. Thus, he decided to be more obedient. He not only didn't shoot back out of the ground, he did not make any more sound. He was acting like a complete ostrich, but what could you do about it? AI, for a flower blossom tier elite to do this kind of thing, what a humiliation. But all knew that the reason for that was because Ling Han was too powerful and was completely superior to him in battle prowess. What else could Na Zhiyan do but submit? Fun! Hunyo clapped her hands, then swept a threatening glare over the spectators and asked in displeasure, "Why does Nyo not hear applause?" Pa, 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 pa. Everyone hurriedly began applauding. They could not afford to offend this little girl, either. Ling Han smiled slightly, crouched on the ground, and asked, "Master Na, can we converse calmly now?" Na Zhiyan wanted to cry, but had no tears. He had been trying to resolve things peacefully, but the other party was so damn violent. At first, Ling Han had a little girl attack him. Then he himself attacked. How many times had he been thrashed by now? But in front of these 2 violent characters, how could he dare voice any objection? He quickly clapped a hand on the ground, expressing that he was willing to have a peace talk. Then talk nicely. Don't bury your head deep into the ground, or I will think that you have some complaint about me. Oh, right. You don't have a complaint about me, do you? Na Zhiyan pulled his head out of the ground, shook his head quickly, and exclaimed, "I wouldn't dare! I wouldn't dare! Wouldn't dare or wouldn't?" Ling Han asked, smiling. Wouldn't and wouldn't dare to either. Na Zhiyan finally became smarter this time round. Ling Han patted his shoulder, then said, "This is a very good start. I am very satisfied. You had better continue to let me feel satisfied. Otherwise, if I am dissatisfied, then you'll suffer." "Understand, I understand." Na Zhiyan quickly nodded. "Talk about your origins first." Ling Han was very curious. Na Zhiyan's martial arts inheritance seemed to be greatly different from the traditional Tao of this world. Na Zhiyan hesitated. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Actually, I can also search your soul." Na Zhiyan's face instantly turned green. If his soul was searched, then his spirit would be completely destroyed, and he would be deader than dead. However, soul search was definitely not something that a flower blossom tier cultivator should be able to use. But the problem was, what other flower blossom tier cultivator could be as young as Ling Han? Thus, he would rather believe Ling Han's threat than doubt him, only to regret later. "I come from the sea race," he quickly answered. Sea race. Ling Han was surprised. In both his lifetimes, he had never heard of this sea race. Where had this party come from? Wait, outside the desolate north was the ocean, so was the sea race a race that resided in the oceans? Na Zhiyan nodded, and without waiting for Ling Han to ask, began to explain. "Actually, the majority of this world is sea. I come from the northern sea. Aside from that, there also exist 4 other seas: the Eastern Sea, the Western Sea, the Southern Sea, and the Central Sea." No wonder Na Zhiyan had said that where he came from there were 100,000 flower blossom tier cultivators, and there were at least 10 to 20,000 people stronger than even the flower blossom tier. The 100,000 flower blossom tier cultivators you mentioned, were you referring all the seas, or just your northern sea? Ling Han questioned. "Our northern sea," Na Zhiyan answered honestly. Ling Han's expression changed slightly, though he had never gone to the Central Prefecture or the other 3 regions. He roughly estimated that there were only about 100,000 flower blossom tier cultivators in them altogether. The North region had the least, possibly not even having 10,000. But merely the Northern Sea already had 100,000 flower blossom tier cultivators. If all 5 seas had about the same power base, then how powerful was the sea race? Among your sea race, which sea is the most powerful? He asked. Naturally, the Central Sea. That is where our Sea Emperor resides, the place that all members of the sea race hope to reach. Na Ji Yen declared, filled with longing. Give me some concrete details about the martial arts level in your Northern Sea, Ling Han asked. Since Na Ji Yen had already spoken, he no longer had any intention to keep matters hidden. He said, In our Northern Sea, the leader is naturally the royal clan of the sea race, and beneath them, there are a great many general clans. When he saw Ling Han shoot him a glare, he hurriedly added, General clans have at least powerful elites of the deity transformation tier, whereas the royal clan has at least heaven tier ultimate elites. It is rumored that there were even a few kings that had broken through to the shattering void tier, and they are the most powerful existence in the whole world. The shattering void tier. Ling Han could not help but feel rueful. How important was it to be born in a good era? In his last life, there was a great shortage of spiritual qi in the whole world. An environment for martial arts was terrible. Even monsters like the Sword Emperor could only be trapped in the heaven tier. And with his talent in alchemy, if he had been born in an era like the current one, he definitely could have broken through to the shattering void tier, or even become a true immortal, simply with alchemy. The current him was absolutely not qualified to stand against an ultimate elite of the shattering void tier. Chapter 528, A Vial. Chapter 528, A Vial. When he touched on the subject of the shattering void tier, Na Ji Yen seemed to have regained his confidence. He said, Human races, sir, even if your battle prowess is monstrous, you are still only in the flower blossom tier after all. There is no way that you would be able to match the sea race of our Northern Sea. Furthermore, I am under the command of a lord from one of the general clans to come here to retrieve an ancient object. I shall leave upon retrieving it. Us members of the sea race dislike land, and will definitely not invade the land masses. These words were quite believable. At least, Ling Han had never heard of the sea race in his last life. Obviously, they each minded their own business, and did not make any attempts to trespass onto each other's territory. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Has your brain been kicked by a donkey? In the territory of our human race, you still ask me not to meddle in the business of others? Na Ji Yen instantly felt cold. It was one thing how powerful the sea race was. The problem now was that he had fallen into Ling Han's hands, and whether he lived or died was completely at the latter's whim. He quickly said, I know my mistake. I know my mistake. What a humiliation. An elite of the flower blossom tier would actually act so humble. Though people could not hear what Ling Han and Na Jian said, simply looking at the submissive, servile display that Na Jian was putting on, they were aware that he now wanted nothing more than to lick Ling Han's shoes. Disdainful. General clan, those that have heaven-tier cultivators? Ling Han rubbed his chin, then asked curiously, Since your sea race is so powerful, why did they send someone like you? Na Ji Yen was feeling very depressed. The martial arts level of this desolate north was not that high. Even someone like him should be strong enough to do as he liked. He said, I am one of the sea demon race and am naturally proficient at bewitching. That lord from the general clan has no desire to create any great uproar, because that mineshaft is too strange. If there were many members of the sea race who died there, it may even attract the attention of the royal clan. Then what exactly is the object that you seek? Ling Han asked. Na Jian hesitated slightly, then said, It is said to be a vial, but I am not very sure. What is it used for? I don't know either. All I know is that the Lord values it very much and has commanded me to do things quietly, but I must definitely obtain that vial. Is the way you do things considered quiet? Ling Han humphed, But when he thought about it, there was no communication between the seas and land, no matter how many people died on land. What relation did it have with the sea race? They would not care at all. So in this aspect, Najien had really been doing things quietly. Sir, Najien said pitifully. His battle prowess was definitely considered top tier in the desolate north. But among the sea race, he could only be barely considered a strong cultivator. Thus, he did not have that kind of powerful aura, nor did he have the unyielding personality of a true elite cultivator. In other words, he was soft. Ling Han gave it some thought, then said, "You stay here with me for a while." He knocked Na Zhiyan unconscious with a single palm strike, then withdrew him into the Black Tower. Because of this member of the sea race, who knew how many humans had died, Ling Han naturally would not let him go so easily. However, he still wanted to ask Na Zhiyan for some more information about the sea race, and thus had no plans to kill the latter as of this moment. Seeing a flower blossom tier cultivator so easily dealt with by Ling Han, everyone's hearts were filled with anxiety. If Ling Han wanted to kill them, that would merely be as easy as flipping his hand over. Flower blossom tier cultivators had transcended mortality and were inconceivably powerful. Ling Han looked at Bo Wenlin, smiled, and said, "Master Bo." "No, no." Bo Wenlin waved his hands quickly. If he was actually addressed by an elite cultivator of flower blossom tier cultivator as master, that was obviously like grilling him on top of an open fire. Ling Han said in displeasure, "Master Bo seems to like cutting off the words of others." Bo Wenlin really felt like dying. He simply did not want Ling Han to address him respectfully. What did he do wrong again? But when Ling Han said that, how could he dare to talk back? He merely shut his mouth obediently. "Come with me to see the Fire Emperor," Ling Han said, smiling. Bo Wenlin instantly hesitated. "It can't be that you're in the mood for some murder and want to kill even the Fire Emperor, right?" Didn't Master Bo say that you would follow me wherever I go?" "I remember very distinctly those were your exact words," Ling Han said, smiling. "The thing I hate most is those who go back on their words. Do you want me to hate you?" Hunyo bared her teeth, killing intent soaring. Whomever Ling Han hated, she was very willing to use her little fists to smash him into pieces. With two flower blossom tier cultivators staring at him, what else could Bo Wenlin say? He could only say, "I am willing to go with you, sir." Ling Han smiled, then said, "Let's go then." After the three of them left, the others finally gasped in relief. All of them could feel a layer of cold sweat on their backs. The pressure exuded by flower blossom tier cultivators was really too terrifying. Such beings were on a completely different level from them. That powerful cultivator seems to be deliberately picking on Bo Wenlin. How did Old Nine of the Bo clan offend him? That can't be right. If he really committed an offense, that elite cultivator needs only a finger to squish him to mush. I know Bo Wenlin's son had previously made a move against that elite cultivator, yet was killed in the process. Old Nine of the Bo clan would naturally not let things slide. So he ran over to hunt down the elite cultivator, which is what led to the events after. I see. Looks like we all have to discipline the juniors in our own clans so that they won't inexplicably offend a powerful cultivator. That could really lead to death and ruin for the whole clan. That's right. They all sighed ruefully, and Ling Han had succeeded in his scheme. He was not simply torturing Bo Wenlin for fun, but was also using him to set an example so that these great clans that were used to being arrogant and condescending reflected on themselves and their own actions. In the wider world, there would always be someone stronger and more talented than themselves, so they should not be too arrogant in their ways. Getting back to the subject, Ling Han and the others were heading towards the Imperial Palace. They did not walk too fast, so by the time they arrived at the Imperial Palace, the entire Imperial Palace had entered into a state of emergency. There was a terrifying array already activated, as if they were prepared to face some great enemy. "Halt!" someone yelled loudly. This is an important place of fire country, and it is forbidden for outsiders to enter. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I have something to say to the Fire Emperor. Tell him to come out, and we can all speak peacefully. Don't make me resort to force. In truth, I am one who dislikes using force and violence very much. The corner of Bo Wenlin's mouth twitched involuntarily, and he secretly mocked in his heart. Then who was that guy whose motto was to use violence to enforce submission? Leave immediately. Another voice transmitted from the imperial palace. Now, everyone was well aware of how powerful Ling Han was. Who would dare shut down the protective array? Without the defenses provided by the array technique, how could they be able to stop an elite flower blossom tier cultivator? Even if that old emperor of fire country came, there was still a chance he might not be able to protect all of them. Ling Han clapped a hand onto Bo Wenlin's shoulder, smiled, and said, Do you all recognize this person? I will give you the time for 10 breaths, and if I still do not see the Rain Emperor by then, I will kill this guy. Bo Wenlin instantly shivered. How could the Fire Emperor possibly risk his life and appear for his sake? He was definitely going to die. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, I am only joking around with them. Bo Wenlin sighed in relief, thinking, I am really going to be broken from being played around by this guy. I will only cripple your 4 limbs, Ling Han continued. Ah. Bo Wenlin was again scared and could not help but shudder again. AI, you really don't know how to appreciate jokes. Forget it, I won't tease you anymore. It would be better if I just went straight ahead to break through the array technique and met the Fire Emperor directly. Ling Han looked ahead, activating the Eye of Truth. He began to observe this array technique in search for any weak points. By now, he was at least a 5th-tier array technique master. It was not possible for him to lay out a 6th-tier array technique now, but if it was merely to unravel one, it would be a piece of cake. After all, there was no one disturbing him now, so he could proceed with a calm and serene mindset. Chapter 5:29 Fire Country Yields. Chapter 5:29 Fire Country Yields. There was a large variety of array techniques. There were some that focused on bewitching the senses and were capable of imprisoning those caught in their threshold to their death. There were others that were killing arrays, and whoever entered would encounter an endless barrage of murderous traps. There were also some arrays that were mainly meant for defense and could be as sturdy as an iron barrel. Mountain protection great arrays typically focused on defense, and the one laid out for the Imperial Palace of Fire Country was as such. Though it was a 6th-tier array technique, it would be very difficult for even a spiritual infant tier cultivator to force his way in. That was because once an opening was created in the defenses, it would very quickly close up. Thus, only if one was powerful enough to create a gigantic opening could he pass through calmly. That would at least have to be one in the middle period of the spiritual infant tier. Ling Han's battle prowess was indeed awesome, but he had yet to reach the point where he had broken through the restrictions of the spiritual infant tier. As a result, he could not possibly barge in through this massive great array technique by force. However, unraveling this array technique was a completely different story. With the use of the Eye of Truth, this array technique was practically exposed completely to his eyes. The easiest way to unravel the array is to destroy a few formations' eyes inside, but they are located within the array, so this solution contradicts itself, unless I have someone on the inside helping me. However, there is also another slightly more troublesome mean to unravel the array, and that is to attack several weak areas at the same time to create a temporary opening. Ling Han mumbled to himself, the sun, moon, and stars surprisingly appearing in his gaze. If I use Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow to strike against all 7 points at the same time, I'm sure I should be able to create a huge opening. He took a deep breath, his arm stretching out as if he was pulling a bowstring. Suddenly, 7 points of light appeared which transformed into 7 arrowheads. Then the body of the arrows that seemed to be formed out of light also appeared, covered with multiple characters. They, too, did not belong to any of the current cultivation systems and were exuding a terrifying ancient aura. The Eye of Truth combined with the annihilating Dragon Star arrow. These two mystical powers, teamed up together, were practically the perfect match. For some reason, all those in the Imperial Palace felt an endless coldness surround them, as if they would suffer a very terrifying tragedy in the next moment. The moment the 5 fingers of Ling Han's right hand loosened, 7 arrows of light immediately shot towards the great array. Once released, the 7 arrows of light shot towards 7 different directions, moving as fast as if they were shooting stars. No one could grasp the course they were traveling. With that kind of a shot, this would practically mean death for whoever was being aimed at, because under normal conditions, who would keep a full-body defense of origin power over themselves? Wang, the arrows shot out, but they did not hit the Imperial Palace directly. A protective screen appeared, blocking the advance of these arrows, but countless cracks appeared on this screen of light, and it suddenly shattered as if it was made from fragile porcelain. Ling Han smiled. With his Eye of Truth, this great array could not even withstand a single strike. It was directly unraveled by his 1 bow and 7 arrows. Of course, this was also because the annihilating Dragon Star arrow was exceptionally powerful. Otherwise, even if one managed to find the weak points, he might not be able to unravel the array either. After all, these weak spots were only relatively weaker than the other areas, so how could they be broken through by simply any random attack? However, the formation's eyes for the array had not been destroyed, and with the continuous gathering of the surrounding spiritual chi, the reconstruction of the great array had begun. Let's go! Ling Han did not have the time to practice his archery skills here. He immediately picked Hunyo up and entered the Imperial Palace. At this time, even if the great array was reactivated, there was not much use. Ling Han had already entered the array, and it would be considerably easier for him to unravel the array from within. He need only destroy the formation's eyes. What? He actually unraveled the array and came in. That can't be, can it? This great array is something that perhaps even an elite spiritual infant tier cultivator may not be able to break through. Everyone exclaimed in shock. This was really unbelievable to the masses. Ling Han was only in the flower blossom tier, so how could he possibly be able to instantly unravel the protective array for the Imperial Palace? Could it be that this guy's battle prowess was even more terrifying than a spiritual infant tier cultivators? What were they supposed to do now? Even their great protective array was rendered useless. Who else would be able to stop Ling Han now? Young friend, if there's anything you need to say, please say it to me. I believe that no matter how big the matter is, I would be in a position to make a decision. At this moment, an old man appeared. He looked to be in his 70s or 80s, seeming as if he could close his eyes in eternal sleep at the moment. There were actually flames raging upon his head. These were not real flames, but rather flames of martial intent. What did the appearance of flames of martial intent imply? Forcibly boosting life energy by burning up own life and martial intent would allow one to reach their best condition in the late period of their life. This was something that could not be helped. When a cultivator entered the elderly stage, his blood and breath would be exhausted and battle prowess would no longer be as powerful as it used to be. Only by burning the flames of martial intent would they be able to rise to a higher level for a single battle. But doing so, no matter who the victor was, their vitality would be greatly damaged. They did not have that many years left to live in the first place, and doing so would cause their remaining lifespan to fall to rock bottom. It might even be possible that they could die directly after this battle. The old emperor. Everyone knelt down, incredibly reverent. This was the Fire Emperor of 4 generations ago, and also the only flower blossom tier cultivator of Fire Country. He forcibly broke through to the flower blossom tier with the aid of power of the nation, and only within Fire Country would he possess the lifespan of a flower blossom tier cultivator. Otherwise, the moment he left the country's boundaries, due to the fact that he had lived for close to 300 years, he was definitely going to immediately rot. In the desolate north, flower blossom tier cultivators were the divine tools whose duty was to protect the country and defend against external enemies. Ling Han was too powerful. One move was enough to unravel the great array, forcing the old emperor to appear. This had indeed reached the most critical time period for Fire Country. "I only have one request. Immediately stop excavation of that ancient mine shaft," Ling Han said. The old emperor looked slightly hesitant. That old mine shaft could allow cultivators of the spiritual pedestal tier see some hope of breaking through it, was the hope for a real breakthrough. What did that mean? It meant that there would appear more than one ultimate elites of the flower blossom tier in Fire Country. Then Fire Country could definitely have a chance at sweeping aside all other 8 countries and bring the whole desolate north under its banner. More land and more citizens would lead to an even stronger power of the nation. Then there would appear even more flower blossom tier cultivators in Fire Country. Even if the mine shaft had been emptied out, power of nation would not dry up, and the great empire of Fire Country would thus be passed on for many generations. There was too much involved in this, so the old emperor was naturally hesitant. "All right, I agree." After merely a moment, the old emperor nodded in assent. If they could not even manage to get through this dilemma they were currently facing, what was the point of deliberating about their future? Ling Han said calmly, "I hope you are not giving me a half-hearted agreement. If you are," he drew out the demon birth sword, and with a wave, 19 flashes of sword chi shot out. Every flash of sword chi was covered with simple, ancient characters. They were the bone marks he had obtained from the old mongoose, and could compound one's attack. They could practically be considered a mystical power on their own. His slash shot out at the skies, and a terrifying scene appeared. It was as if even the sky itself had cracked, and there actually appeared a black, empty void. Too terrifying, the power behind this slash was so strong it was unfathomable. Everyone could not help but shiver in fear. That was 19 flashes of sword chi. Was this guy really human? 10 flashes of chi would be considered to be a ruler at the very apex, so what kind of concept was 19 flashes? In the flower blossom tier, he was definitely invincible. This time, the old emperor had completely abandoned any naive ideas of falsely agreeing to Ling Han's request. Letting time drag on when 8 or 10 flower blossom tier cultivators appeared out of Fire Country. He'd stand against Ling Han then. But now he realized that even if there were 80 or 100 flower blossom tier cultivators, they would only be delivering themselves up to die. What more 8 or 10 of them? "I would not dare." He made sure his attitude and tone was most humble. Ling Han nodded, turned, and left. He wanted to properly interrogate that Na Jiyen. Chapter 530, The Jade Vial. Chapter 530, The Jade Vial. Ling Han arrived at the city gates, then entered the Black Tower with Hunyao and began Na Jiyen's interrogation. He wanted to know more information about the sea race. Inside the Black Tower, there was even less of a chance for Na Jiyen to put up a resistance. Whatever Ling Han asked, he would answer honestly, not daring to make the slightest attempt at deception. That member of the general clan that Na Jiyen was under the command of was named Xian Kongyin. The Xian clan was an extremely powerful existence among the general clans of the Northern Sea. Xian Kongyin, who was in the deity transformation tier, was an important character of that clan. According to Na Jiyen's private investigations, he was very ambitious. Why had Xian Kongyin not sent anyone, and instead only chose to send Na Jiyen alone to perform this mission? Firstly, because Na Jiyen had a special ability. Sea demons were born exceptionally proficient at bewitchment and could send their enemies as soldiers back without even a fight. They might even be able to confound someone so much that their victim was not even aware he was being bewitched. For example, the Fire Emperor should be aware of the consequences of forcibly excavating the ancient mine. That was something that could weaken the foundations of a country and bring ruin to the whole power of the nation. Yet, he still chose to obstinately cling to his course, fantasizing about the wonderful future he had as a flower blossom tear cultivator. One reason for that was indeed the great temptation the mineshaft held, and another was greatly due to Na Zhiyan's bewitchment. Secondly, because Xian Kongyan obviously did not want to alert any others, not even the own clansmen, about the ancient mineshaft and the mysterious vial. He must have read about it in some ancient classical book and wanted to claim sole possession of it. This was something that could be confirmed based on the fact that he had only sent Na Zhiyan. Only one person, it would be extremely easy to kill him to keep him from talking. Ling Han's curiosity was spiked even further. A treasure that could make an elite cultivator in the deity transformation tier make such painstaking efforts just to attain, it definitely had to be of incredible value. It was certain that that vial was definitely the cursed tool that Small Tower had mentioned. But what exactly was it used for? It was simple. He only had to dig it out. Ling Han had an extremely tough natal horoscope, and added with the presence of the Black Tower, there was absolutely no need for him to worry about being cursed. He could really go wherever and do whatever he liked in the ancient mine. Additionally, he also had one other thing to do, and that was to bring the miners into the Black Tower so that he could clean the effects of the curse on them. He arrived at the old mine shaft. At this moment, the Imperial Guards had already rushed over, bringing with them the Imperial decree of the Fire Emperor. They would soon close up the old mine and would obey Ling Han's commands. Ling Han had all the miners gather at the upper level. Then he activated the aura of the flower blossom tier to knock all of them unconscious before he took them into the Black Tower. He then left the old mine and threw them all out. As for the question when they would regain consciousness or what reaction they would have, Ling Han couldn't care less. Young Master Han, you really can't stand against Master Kong Yin. Na Zhiyan was practically ready to begin bawling. I have to make a progress report to Master Kong Yin every 10 days, and tomorrow is the scheduled day for my report. Master Kong Yin is already very displeased with the current progression rate. If things continue to be delayed, it can't be guaranteed that Master Kong Yin would not come personally. By then, we'll all be in big trouble. That was an elite deity transformation tier cultivator. With a mere thought, he could crush a spiritual infant tier cultivator to death. No matter how monstrous Ling Han was, there was no way he would be able to fight back against such an existence. So soon? Ling Han frowned. If an elite deity transformation tier cultivator really came, what was he supposed to do to resist? After so many days, the two corpses of divine beings had already lost too much immortal level pressure. By now, they most probably would only be capable of suppressing a flower blossom tier cultivator, and that was practically useless for him did he still need help in standing against a flower blossom tier cultivator. Young Master Han, for the sake of our lives, please don't interfere in this matter. You are not capable of interfering, either, Na Zhiyan advised. Furthermore, he suspected that the vial, which even a deity transformation tier cultivator like Si Kong Yin placed so much importance on, had to have effects even superior to the level of deity transformation tier. If so, it definitely had to be incredibly awesome. If the news about the vial was leaked, perhaps even the royal clan would make a move on it. Ling Han shook his head. There was no way he could allow excavation of this old mine to continue, but he could not ignore the threat that a deity transformation tier cultivator could pose, either. So why not do it this way? He would obtain that cursed tool and have that deity transformation tier cultivator hunt him down instead. Anyways, he was planning to head to the central prefecture. There was a natural barrier separating the various zones, and if a deity transformation tier cultivator headed that way, his power would be seriously weakened. Furthermore, deity transformation tier cultivators could really not be considered particularly powerful there. Decided then. Ling Han had been planning to dig out that cursed tool in the first place, so naturally it was now an even more urgent matter on his agenda. He returned to the old mine and journeyed deep within, beginning his search with Hunyo by his side. The old mine was a very special place. The aura of the cursed tool soared within like wisps of blood, preventing divine sense from spreading out. This caused Ling Han to have no way to investigate objects that were too far a distance away from him. But because he knew that the vial could possibly be the source of this cursed qi, Ling Han knew what he had to do, and that was to head to the area where the cursed qi was strongest. When he found it, he then had to begin digging. On the matter of digging, he definitely was more efficient than 10,000 miners put together. What kind of power did the flower blossom tear possess? Be it stone or dirt, they would be easily pierced through. Furthermore, there was no need for him to expend unnecessary effort to move out the dirt he had dug out, either, since he could simply toss it all into the Black Tower. The space inside was overwhelmingly huge. Who knew how many mountain ranges or oceans he could store inside? His efficiency rate was thus incredibly high, of course. After merely less than half a day's time, the aura soaring up from the ground was as crimson as blood, and upon contact his skin would immediately turn blood red in color. A powerful urge to commit violence and bloodshed would rise up in his heart, with a desire to kill all living creatures. This effect was very big, and in a short while both Ling Han and Hunyo felt incredible pressure. They hurriedly entered into the Black Tower to take a break. This is not the power of the curse. Rather, it is possible that the ultimate cultivator who had died here had a violent nature. As time passed, it continued to affect the area here, Small Tower said. Ling Han frowned and said, "What you mean is that this place not only contains a cursed tool, there could also possibly be the body of an ultimate cultivator buried here. Mayhap that person was killed by that cursed tool," Small Tower deduced. After staying inside the Black Tower for a long time, the violent urge in their bodies finally vanished, and the two once again left the Black Tower and continued digging. Hunyo was naturally a good hand at it, since her little claws were extremely sharp. What a powerful resentment! After digging for over a dozen minutes, Ling Han got a sudden shock and felt as if something had entered into his body. It was a strange feeling and made him feel threatened for some reason. Was this the power of the curse? It would not immediately take one's life, but would have imperceptible influence and finally cause one to die suddenly. "Vial!" Hunyo exclaimed, pointing at the ground. Ling Han nodded. The opening of a vial was exposed there, so he hurriedly continued to dig. Soon enough, the whole vial was out in the open. It was only about a foot tall and very slender. It was made out of jade. Even if it had been buried underground for many years, it was not the slightest bit damaged. There was a large number of designs on the body of the vial. It should be some kind of martial intent that was related to curses. He wanted to pick up the jade vial, but when he tried, he actually found out that he was not able to pick it up. Was it rooted to the ground? He increased the force he was exerting, and the jade vial was finally picked up. However, once it left the ground, a blood-colored fountain gushed forth, and an extremely terrifying aura spread out in all directions. Even if Ling Han had the divine sense of the heaven tier, he felt a shiver as if a great catastrophe was about to happen. "Let's go!" He put away the jade vial, hurriedly picked Hunyo up, and flew upwards. Chapter 531 Variants. Chapter 531 Variants. Hong, the blood-colored fountain was getting increasingly fiercer. At first, it was merely about as wide as an arm, but soon grew to be as wide as an adult man, and eventually as tall as a well. Finally, it became like a natural geyser, waves of blood soaring to the skies, as if it meant to flood the whole world. Ling Han flew upwards all the way. Underneath him was the quickly rising water level. It was practically hot on his heels. Z, with its terrifying erosive properties, his shoes began to corrode, followed by his socks. The soles of his feet also became extraordinarily itchy as layer after layer of skin peeled off, as if even his blood and flesh was going to be melted, with only his skeleton left behind. This was really too scary. Merely a little steam evaporated from the liquid had this level of erosive properties. Then, if he was really swallowed up by the wave of blood, could he still survive? One had to know that he was one who was cultivating the indestructible heaven scroll, and his physical body was on par with precious metals of the same level. If it was any other flower blossom tier cultivator in his place, he'd probably be melted down into a puddle of bloody water now. Ling Han quickly drew Hunyo into the Black Tower and continued to fly upwards with all his might. Could it be that the ground was actually a huge array, and the jade vial was the formation's its heart? Now that he had extracted the formation's eye, the huge array stopped functioning, and whatever was being suppressed inside immediately appeared. Then hadn't he caused a huge problem? Thankfully, everyone who was here had evacuated. Otherwise, the miners who had been here would have been swallowed up by this ocean of blood. Pung! Ling Han flew up to the skies and soon reached a spot right above the old mine. The pillar of blood soared to the skies and reached at least 100 feet in height before it began to fall back down. Great amounts of bloody water surged forth, and the whole ancient mine had become a lake in a mere instant. As far as the eye could see, it was a stretch of blood red. Ling Han stood on the banks of the lake and held his breath. There was a strong smell of iron coming from this bloody water, as if a great massacre had just occurred. The smell was particularly strong, making even him feel as if he was about to transform into a great monster that wanted to slaughter all in this world. Was this really blood? If it was, then how many people would have to die to create such an overwhelming amount? Ling Han could not help but feel his hair stand on ends. He was very clear how colossal the old mine was, but he had absolutely no estimate of the size of the space sealed beneath the jade vial. But to fill up merely the whole space inside the old mine, perhaps the blood of even 10 million might not be enough. You guessed wrongly. At most, there is only the blood of about a dozen people, Small Tower piped up. How could that be? Ling Han immediately exclaimed in shock. If the amount here was only the blood of about a dozen people, then how big would these people have to be? The size of a mountain. The higher the ability of a cultivator, the more blood they possess. A little blood would be enough to form a sea by itself. What is there to be so shocked about? Small Tower countered. The blood here originates from over a dozen different sources, so at most, it must have come from over a dozen people. Ling Han was just about to speak when he paused. He saw a flash of white light appear in the lake of blood, which was soon followed by the appearance of a white-colored corpse floating on the waters, causing ripples to appear on the surface. It was a man, and when he had been alive, he had definitely been extremely handsome. At this moment, he was dressed entirely in white, with a wound on his chest that had caused his heart to explode directly in his chest. Another corpse appeared. This one was a bald man who wore clay, yellow clothing. There were actually 9 dots marked on his head, and he wore a string of beads on his chest. His attire was extremely strange. He too had a hole in his chest, which showed that his heart had burst directly from the wound. Is this the so-called ancient monk? Ling Han had heard of how the ancient monks dressed. They gave up meat and fish and forbade killing of any sort. They were bound by strict monastic commandments. The third corpse appeared. This one was a girl of unsurpassed beauty. She wore a long red skirt, which merged with the bloody water. It was not possible to distinguish where the skirt ended and the bloody water began. She did not die from having her heart crushed, but there was a bloody hole on her jade-like forehead, which had caused her lamentable death. This was really a captivating beauty. Anyone who saw her would feel the urge to sigh in pity at her death. She was soon followed by the 4th corpse. Ling Han took count. There was a total of 12 corpses. They seemed to have been suppressed underground before, and now They were all released in one go. Ling Han was extremely clear how terrifying the erosive abilities this bloody water had. However, though these corpses had been buried for a few centuries, or even a few millennia, they had not rotted at all. Then, how powerful had these people been when they were still alive? Could Heaven-tier cultivators be this strong? Ling Han was unsure. He now only possessed a sliver of the Heaven-tier divine sense, and could only make a rough deduction about those who might have been on the same cultivation level as he had once been. He was not able to obtain a definite answer. Perhaps these people might possibly even have been in the Shattering Void tier. The problem was, although these people had all died from fatal blows to varying critical points, they shared a common feature, and that was that they had all been struck fatally by fists. They had their heart crushed or head pierced through by a punch as if they were facing an unsurpassed god, their only destiny to die in an instant. The blood of these 12 ultimate elites combined to form this lake of blood. What? A shocked expression appeared on Ling Han's face. There actually emerged a silver-colored spider the size of a mountain on the surface of the lake. Every single leg was like a divine spear, the aura exuding from it incredibly terrifying, making him feel as if he was made of fragile porcelain that, with the current barrage of aura, was beginning to crack. This was no illusion. Ling Han looked down and could feel multiple cracks appearing on his hands. At this moment, beads of blood emerged from these cracks, and there were more and more appearing. They formed a straight line and dripped downwards without end. Too terrifying. He was merely standing here at such a big distance, and it was enough to make him feel like he was about to collapse. Heaven-tier cultivators could not reach this level of power, and this world only allowed power up to Shattering Void tier level. Thus, this silver spider definitely had to be of the Shattering Void tier level. This giant silver spider merely glanced at Ling Han, yet did not have any expression at all. It behaved high and mighty, as if it was an invincible creature. It did indeed have no need to look at Ling Han in contempt, because both parties were not on the same level at all. Just like how Ling Han would look at a common man did, he need to treat the other with contempt to reflect his superior might. It was merely a sweeping glance, and Ling Han felt as if his body was about to be crushed. His spirit similarly felt like it was about to burst. Perhaps Ling Han had to return to the Heaven tier to be able to stand strong against this kind of aura that was merely the aura. It was at this moment a gigantic whirlpool appeared in the lake of blood. The waters immediately began to sink, and the speed was gradually increasing. Within a few breaths' time, the waters of the lake of blood had completely disappeared, and these 12 corpses had naturally disappeared with them. The silver spider stretched its colossal 8 legs and shrank in size before becoming a streak of light. With a xiao, it leaped into the mine shaft and could no longer be seen. What was up with this old mine? Ling Han frowned deeply. At the beginning, he had only thought that a cursed tool had been buried here, or perhaps it was a great ultimate cultivator that had affected this piece of land. However, though he had indeed obtained a cursed tool, 12 corpses that had been extremely mighty in their lifetimes had also appeared. Furthermore, there was also a giant silver spider that he suspected was still alive. He couldn't even be sure if that was a false image from eons ago or a real creature. With power to that extent, he naturally had no way to get near it, and thus, of course, no way to study it closely. Chapter 532, Trying Out the Cursed Tool. Chapter 532, Trying Out the Cursed Tool. At first, he had thought that all the mysteries would be solved once the mine was completely excavated, but who knew that even more riddles would emerge? The bloody waters had completely vanished, and peace returned to the old mine. However, Ling Han was not the slightest bit at peace. He sensed that there were still great many secrets hidden in this world. In his last life, he had indeed explored numerous ancient sites, but in terms of level, this time could be considered number 2. The first on the list was naturally when he encountered the Black Tower, which had crushed him directly. Moreover, Small Tower would frequently act Sundra and say that it could destroy this entire world with a single move. Ling Han entered into the Black Tower. Since he was not able to figure things out for the moment, he'd first deal with that vial. Small Tower, what is this thing? He asked. A cursed tool, Small Tower said calmly, appearing out of nowhere. This tool's spirit had always been very Sundra. Whatever it saw, it would think it was inferior to itself by uncountable levels. What made Ling Han feel even more depressed was that was indeed the fact, so he didn't even have the chance to crack down on Small Tower. How do I use it? Ling Han felt no shame in continuing his questions. Small Tower said, if you want to curse someone, then take something from his body, like hair or a fingernail. Then place it in the vial. Do you see the designs on the body of the vial? Those represent the effects of the curse. For example, illness, berserk, madness, death, misfortune. Whatever curse you want to lay, activate the corresponding designs. Blood, flesh, hair, and skin have close relations with the main body, and would be able to have effect even if there was a distance of 10,000 miles. Ling Han was surprised. He had initially thought that these designs were martial intent, but had not thought that they actually symbolized the button to curse someone. He thought for a moment and could not help but be astonished, asking, then, if that's the case, someone would only need to take my hair, fingernail, or blood that I had just shed and would be able to lay a curse on me? Naturally. Small Tower nodded. Therefore, please be as cautious as possible. However, curses vary from person to person. The stronger your ability and the tougher your natal horoscope, the higher level the cursed tool or the curse master needs to be to successfully lay a curse on you. Ling Han nodded. From now onwards, he would take care. Who knew if he would be secretly targeted by some curse master one day? Would this cursed tool be able to take effect on a deity transformation tier cultivator? A thought flashed in his head. If it was not able to even do so much, then what did Xian Kong Mind want this thing for? Perhaps even Heaven tier or Shattering Void tier cultivators would be affected. This cursed tool had been suppressing 12 extremely terrifying ancient corpses. Moreover, there was still that mountain-sized silver spider, which might be greatly related as well. We'll do an experiment first. Ling Han summoned Na Jian over and said, pluck out a hair for me. Young Master Han, may I know what you need my hair for? Na Jian asked in bafflement as he handed him the hair. How could Na Jian possibly dare resist? It was only a single hair. It wasn't that he had to sell off his asterisk. Ling Han smiled and tossed the hair into the vial. Then he shook the jade vial and asked, do you find this familiar? Familiar. Na Jian was confused. It was only a vial. Could it be that Ling Han had taken it from his residence? But he did not have the slightest bit of memory about it. Ling Han patted his shoulder and said, I advise you to have some mental preparation. He pressed a finger down onto a design and inserted a small amount of origin power as per what Small Tower said. Immediately, this design was activated. It was as if it was brought to life, and a flower actually grew out from the vial. Young Master Han, is this a magic trick? Na Jian could not help but ask. It couldn't be anything but that, right? He simply took a strand of hair from him and tossed it into the vial, and as a result a flower actually bloomed out? What else could it be but a magic trick? But in that case, should he clap his hands to please Ling Han? Io. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Why do I feel a bit of a stomachache? This was really inconceivable. Flower blossom tier cultivators had transcended mortality and could not possibly fall ill, unless they were poisoned, but he did not think that he had eaten anything odd. So how could it be possible that he had been poisoned? Young Master Han. However, his stomachache was getting increasingly fiercer, and instantly it was like a deluge of pain was coming from his stomach, causing him to twist his legs together. Please allow me to take my leave. I need to relieve myself, and I will come pay my respects later. It had taken effect so quickly. Ling Han remembered what Small Tower had said. How fast the effects of the curse would appear completely depended on the level of the curse tool, as well as the cultivation of the one laying the curse and the difference between the cursors and the cursed person's natal horoscope. The greater the difference, the faster the effects would appear, and vice versa. If, on the other hand, the cursed person's natal horoscope was tougher than that of the person laying the curse, it would not be possible for the curse to be successful. This was really a good item to use in a sneak attack. Ling Han laughed and halted the inflow of origin power. The design that had lit up on the vial immediately dimmed, and that flower vanished as well. My stomach doesn't hurt anymore. Na Ji Yen asked confusedly. This was really incomprehensible. The abdominal pain had come so suddenly and vanished in a similarly sudden manner as well. If this had happened to an ordinary person, it could perhaps be believed, but it could not possibly happen to one who was in the flower blossom tier. He looked at Ling Han in shock and exclaimed, "Young Master Han, is this something that you did?" Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "Experience it one more time." He activated yet another design. "Young Master Han, what do you want to do to me?" Na Jian's face had turned green in shock. What damnable thing was this? In merely an instant his face was as pale as dying embers, and he laid his forehead on the ground. Then he declared in despair, "Someone like me should not live in this world at all. Gods, please let down a bolt of lightning to strike me to death. I am a smelly bug, a piece of trash that cannot even be considered a smelly bug." Awesome. Even a flower blossom tier cultivator was cursed to the extent that he had lost all will to live. One had to understand that, no matter the living being, survival was their first priority. This was pure instinct. But now, it seemed as if his instinct had been completely torn away. How utterly terrifying. Ling Han once again stopped. Na Ji Yen instantly jumped up, his face twitching uncontrollably. An alarmed, inconsolable expression was on his face. Too terrifying. This was really too terrifying. Just now he actually felt as if all his hopes had turned to dust and wanted nothing more but to die, just to end everything. But now that he thought about it, what reason did he have to seek death? It was precisely because of this that he could not help but shiver in fear. This move of Ling Han was practically defying logic. Ling Han turned over the jade vial and saw that there was only half a strand of hair remaining inside. To curse another would simultaneously use up the item he used to lay the curse. It was impossible that he would be able to use it without end. Na Jiyan suddenly came to realization and asked, This is the jade vial that Master Kong Yun is seeking." It could only be this kind of treasure that would entice Xian Kong Yin. He had not realized it before. He had busied himself on this matter for almost half a year's time. Yet how long had Ling Han come for? He actually found something that he had worked so hard to find. This naturally caused him to completely not realize that it could be the jade vial he was tasked to find. Ling Han patted his shoulder and said, "I'll assign you a task." Na Ji Yen was filled with fear and trepidation. Just how capable was he? It was obvious that Ling Han would not give him something easy to do. He gathered his courage and asked, "May I know what is your command, young Master Han?" Ling Han smiled slightly and replied, "Very simple. Inform that Xian Kong Yin that the matter about the jade vial is about to conclude and that you will personally meet him to make your report. And while you're at it, steal some of his hair, scales, and fingernails for me. In short, anything that naturally grew from his body would do." Na Jiyan's face turned green with fear. Ling Han was planning to pull a fast one on Xian Kong Yin. Chapter 533, Army Above the Sea. Chapter 533, Army Above the Sea. "Do you intend to refuse?" Ling Han asked, smiling. Without waiting for him to answer, Ling Han plucked a bunch of hair from his head, then picked a single strand and threw it into the jade vial. Thought he'd just name it the vial of curses, then said, "You have to consider carefully." This was no way to threaten someone. Na Ji Yen wanted to weep, but had no tears. The previous 2 times he had been cursed left a lingering fear in his heart, especially the second time when he directly lost all will to live on. Now that he recalled it, it was really too terrifying. Obviously, Ling Han merely needed to obtain a single item from his body to enable him to activate a curse. And now Ling Han had taken a whole bunch of hair from him, so who knew how many times Ling Han could kill him with that? Furthermore, who said that stomachache and desire to die were the only effects of the curse? No, to be able to do something for young Master Han would be my honor. Na Jiyen immediately proclaimed, his expression filled with a strong sense of righteousness. Ling Han patted his shoulder and said, "Not bad. This is what I wanted to hear. As a person, you have to be brighter and more loyal to your friends." Yes, young Master Han is right. Na Jiyen exclaimed earnestly. Ling Han knocked him unconscious with a single smack, then took him out of the Black Tower. Though he had the cursed tool to hold over Na Jian's head, if he could avoid the secret of the Black Tower from being known, Ling Han still chose to do so. After he brought Na Jiyen back to the Imperial City, Ling Han smacked him back to consciousness and said, "Go on. Oh, right. Don't think that you will not be affected once you run far away enough. 3 days later, I will let you experience more fun." Young Master Han, I believe you. There's no more need to test it out. Na Ji Yen hurriedly waved his hands. How could that be allowed? If we don't test things out, how could my sincerity be proven? Ling Han asked in displeasure. Fine. Threatening someone could still be categorized into being sincere or insincere. Na Ji Yen could only leave obediently. He definitely had to complete this task. Only that way would he get a chance of survival. If Xian Kongyan died, then naturally no one would know what he had done. Curse someone to death? Haha, who would believe that something like that was possible? Just like how he previously desired only to die, even if he really had died, who would believe that he had actually been murdered? However, he did indeed have some doubt. From a great distance away, would that thing still really be able to curse him? He definitely had to confirm this fact. Otherwise, when he successfully conned Xian Kongyan, yet the latter was not cursed to death, Na Jiyen was still definitely going to die. In the following 3 days, he put all his energies into speeding up his travel, aiming to leave Ling Han as far away as possible in order to test if that treasure was really capable of imperceptibly killing another from miles away. He soon entered into the sea and did not choose to soar through the skies. The moment he entered the sea, his legs actually miraculously vanished and became a long fishtail. With a strong flick, his speed instantly spiked. He swam towards the deepest parts of the ocean and was much faster than when he'd been soaring above the land. The sea race were indeed suited to live in the sea. Only in the sea could their battle prowess be maximized. The seabed was very dark, but for a flower blossom tier cultivator, this was nothing. On his way, various scenes that were familiar to him appeared, and so did various types of sea race. Though flower blossom tier beings could not be considered the topmost elite in the sea race, they could still be ranked as one of the elites. Thus, on his way, there was a considerable number of sea race people that paid him their respects. There were also some young girls of the sea race who threw him coy glances like mad. The sea demon race were known for their captivating beauty, so he naturally attracted countless young girls. Just when Master Na was feeling very pleased with their attention, a scene that engendered much curiosity appeared. Master Na suddenly flopped onto the sea bed head first, and with bubbles gurgling from his mouth, said, "I am a smelly bug, just let me die." It was really a scene that caused a number of people to pop their eyes out in shock. It took effect. All of a sudden, Na Jiyen felt feelings too complex to unravel. There was only one thought in his mind: definitely had to complete the task that Ling Han had assigned him, or he was definitely going to die. Ling Han did not think about Na Jiyan and Xian Kongyun for the moment. Anyways, if Na Jiyan could manage to bring back some hair or skin from Xian Kongyun, then he'd just curse the latter to death. If he couldn't, then he'd simply head straight to the middle state and just let the latter chase him. He returned home. After so many days away, he naturally wanted to spend some quality time with his family. If he could manage to resolve completely the matter of the sea race, then there would be no need for the Ling clan to move. If he could not, then it would be best for them to relocate elsewhere. Lu Yutong and the other girls were gentle in every possible way. However, Zhu Xian'er's injury had already recovered a number of days, so there was no more reason for her to delay things further. As a result, she begged her leave to deliver the medicine back to the Half Moon sect. After that, she would directly head to Extreme Yang City and wait for Ling Han to arrive. After a few days, he headed to the Imperial City again because he had agreed upon a meeting with Na Dian after 10 days. After staying in the Imperial City for a day, Na Jiyan returned. He delivered up a sack and said, "Young Master Han, I only managed to obtain 3 scales that Master Kongyun had shed." He was afraid Ling Han would be displeased, and hurriedly continued, "Master Kongyun is a parting waters beast from ancient times. The scales he sheds are priceless materials for forging protective armor, so they are very difficult to obtain." Ling Han smiled and said, "That's all right. As long as these scales have been shed from his body, they should do." He knocked Na Jiyan unconscious and drew him into the Black Tower. Then he took out the vial of curses, crushed a single scale of it, and stuffed it inside the vial. After that, he directly activated the curse of death. Instantly a flower bloomed. This meant that the curse had been successfully placed. Otherwise, if the person cursed was of too high a level or had too tough a natal horoscope, which caused the curse not to take effect, then this flower would not bloom at all. A high and mighty deity transformation tier elite was killed with a curse just like that from miles away. Ling Han felt coldness rise from his heart. There really was a multitude of rare and bizarre techniques in this world. Who knew if there would be some other kinds of power that could also similarly kill a person from a great distance away, just like the vial of curses? However, this kind of technique would definitely have its own limitations. Actually, if one was careful enough, it was still possible to dodge it. Since the curse was successful, Ling Han returned home and decided to stay for another 2 months before heading to Extreme Yang City and join up with Ing Hong and Zhu Xian'er before they all traveled to the Middle State. However, his days of peace only lasted for half a month. This day, a wave suddenly rose up on the sea, which then led to great chaos. Though the Ling clan had little contact with the outside world, there would still be a few clansmen who moved around outside. It was soon discovered that in recent days, refugees had appeared in the town. Furthermore, their numbers were increasing gradually. When they asked these refugees, they found out that troops had appeared above the sea, sweeping through all obstacles in their way, heading directly in the direction of the Imperial City. Troops above the sea. Ling Han was astounded. Could it be that Xian Kongyun had not died? Still, wasn't this guy extremely low-key? How could he suddenly appear on such a grand scale? He brought along Hunyao and rushed towards the Imperial City. When he arrived, that huge army had not yet reached there. Thus he headed in the direction of the sea, and after a day's travel, the troops above the sea were finally visible. They didn't seem much different from human troops, but all were foot soldiers. They numbered about 1,000, and ahead of them, there was a unit carrying flags. They all wore scaled armor, which was a bit different from a normal army. Their weapons were mostly made up of long spears and battle axes. Aside from that, there was a considerable number of those who had webbed hands and webbed feet. They did not wear shoes, so it was easily visible. The Sea Race. Chapter 534. Princess of the Sea Race. Chapter 534. princess of the sea race. The army only numbered slightly over 1,000, but the minimum level of the soldiers was in the spiritual pedestal tier. Furthermore, there was only a single vehicular carriage pulled by 2 seahorses. Ancient patterns decorated the walls of the carriage, and there were also a great many holes that had been created from being pierced by weapons. However, they did not affect the grandeur of this carriage, but rather made it look even more aged and majestic. When Ling Han's eyes turned in that direction, his mind suddenly blanked out. He could only see a gigantic hand appear out of thin air which aimed to grab him. This humongous hand was really too terrifying. It was as if even if the sky itself collapsed, this colossal hand would be able to support it with a mere lift. But upon close examination, this was actually a female's hand, the skin as smooth and fair as snow, close to perfection. Too powerful. Ling Han did not have a second thought. He directly took Hunyeo and ducked into the Black Tower, his heart throbbing wildly. Though it was only a single instant, that had been the most dangerous instant he had experienced in this lifetime. If he had been the slightest bit slower, he would definitely have been grabbed by that gigantic hand, and would definitely not have a chance of entering into the Black Tower. A high-level heaven tier, or perhaps even shattering void tier. Ling Han shook his head. He was not able to deduce that person's true power at all. He merely had a sliver of divine sense left over from the heaven tier. Perhaps he could still see through the cultivation level of a normal heaven tier cultivator. But in the case of a high-level heaven tier cultivator, they would be a complete mystery even to him. Moreover, there were actually shattering void tier cultivators amongst the sea race. However, he could confirm one fact, and that was that the elite cultivator inside the carriage could not possibly be Xian Kong Yunha, was merely in the deity transformation tier. An exclamation of surprise arose from within the carriage. "Mistress, is there something wrong?" a warrior from the sea race immediately asked. "There's a very interesting troublemaker," the person inside the carriage replied. Her voice was seductive, as if it possessed an endless entrancing ability. The gaze of that warrior of the sea race fluctuated, as if he wanted to seek out the troublemaker the princess, Her Highness, had mentioned. But how could he possibly discover the existence of the Black Tower? Thus, he was naturally unsuccessful. He teleported, the person in the carriage said, but then mumbled softly to herself. Had he really teleported? I don't recall feeling any shifting of space. But if it wasn't teleportation, then how could he have possibly vanished all of a sudden? The wheels of the carriage rolled, and this army continued its advance towards the imperial city. It was only when this huge army had completely disappeared from sight that Ling Han and Hunyeo emerged back out of the Black Tower. Scared Nyeo to death, "That woman is very powerful," Hunyeo exclaimed, patting her chest in relief. Ling Han nodded. This was one of the greatest people of the sea race, strong to an inconceivable level. Could it be that Na Ji Yen left behind some loose ends? Otherwise, after he had cursed Xian Kong Yun to death, this whole matter should have ended. So how could it be that a whole army of sea race would appear in Naoan with them, an inconceivably powerful woman? An ultimate cultivator that might be a high-level heaven tier cultivator, or perhaps even in the shattering void tier. If she chose to do as she liked in a place like the North region, who could stand in her way? Ling Han drew Na Jian out and narrated to him what had happened previously. Then he asked, "Who is that woman? Also, whom else did you speak to about this matter?" Na Jian was almost on the brink of tears. How could he dare to reveal this kind of secret to anyone? If it was known to the sea race that he was involved in Xian Kong Yun's death by curse, then wouldn't he be torn to pieces? He answered in a trembling voice that person should be the 7th princess of the royal clan, Lady Helian Sun Shui. What cultivation level is she at? Ling Han questioned. Apparently the heaven tier. Na Jiyan gave it some thought, then said with a note of certainty she should be in the heaven tier. The seventh princess is the most prodigious genius of the Hellion royal clan, but has not yet advanced into the shattering void tier. Ling Han had heard him talk about it before. There was a total of 3 great royal clans in the Northern Sea. They were Hellion, Xianyu, and Wenrin. All 3 had an ultimate cultivator of the shattering void tier in their ranks, and they were equivalent to a great sect from the middle state in terms of power. Even if Hellion Sun Shui was not in the shattering void tier and was only in the heaven tier, she would be more than adequate to sweep aside all resistance in the North region. Furthermore, Ling Han felt that she was far stronger than he had been in his last life. As for the question of whether she was on par with the Sword Emperor and the others, this was not so easily gauged. That was because he had not even seen her face to face. From the look of things, she should have come for the Vial of Curses. Otherwise, she would not have appeared so coincidentally at this moment. But since Na Ji Yen did not leak the secret, how had she known about it? Could it be that Xian Kongyan leaked the information to her just before his death? Ling Han thought for a moment, then once again knocked Na Ji Yen out and threw him back into the Black Tower. Then he, too, headed towards the Imperial City. Taking a different route, he surpassed the army of Sea Race and arrived in the Imperial City ahead of them. Honestly speaking, this army was not really advancing very quickly. However, no matter how slow they were, another 2 days later, the Sea Race had still arrived outside the Imperial City. Everyone in Fire Country felt like they were facing a great calamity. Upon the city walls, every soldier had a sword in hand or an arrow mounted on their bow, and war seemed about to begin at any moment. However, in front of an army where the lowest level was the spiritual pedestal tier, any resistance seemed futile. This shouldn't really be considered as an army, but rather Hellion Sun Shui's private guard. After all, their numbers amounted to too few to be considered an army. I don't care who obtained that item. Hand it over immediately. Otherwise, 3 days later, I will incite a great tsunami wave and flood the whole of the desolate north. From within the carriage, Hellion Sun Shui's melodious yet cold voice could be heard. She released a sliver of her aura, and instantly, even the skies changed color. Pa, 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 pa. All dropped their weapons, and aside from those who were in the ranks of rulers for martial arts, were forced to their knees. Everyone was in a state of extreme shock. The battle had not even begun, and things were already like this. The enemy was so strong one could only shiver at their might. What were they to do? They had absolutely no idea what item she was talking about, so how were they supposed to hand it over? When they thought about it, they were really having a bout of extreme bad luck. Just some days ago, someone charged into the imperial palace and forced them to agree to an unjust treaty, which was a great humiliation to them. And now, someone else charged into the imperial city and threatened them. Yet they could not show the slightest bit of their infuriation. Though the woman inside the carriage had not even shown her face, no one dared to doubt her words. She merely released a bit of her aura, and it was enough to have everyone know that she was definitely not joking. She had that kind of power, and at the same time would really do as she had said. Ling Han frowned. Now he could absolutely confirm that the item she wanted was the Vial of Curses. After slight hesitation, he had Hunyo enter into the Black Tower first, then ascended up the city walls. "My lord! My lord! My lord!" When they saw Ling Han, everyone knelt down as if they had seen their savior. Ling Han laughed and said, "Don't look at me. Now, even if there were 10,000 of me, it still wouldn't be enough to stand against a single finger of hers." When they heard Ling Han say that, everyone wore disappointed expressions. Even Ling Han was no match for her, so what were they to do now? Ling Han looked into the distance and called out loudly, "We can negotiate. But if you make another move against me, I will immediately run, and I guarantee you will never find me again." Insolence! How dare you speak to our mistress in this way? The warriors of Sea Race all yelled in indignation. In their hearts, Hellion Sun Shui was an existence on par with a divine deity, and they could not allow the slightest bit of blasphemy against her. A mere human actually dared to negotiate with their mistress? He had to be delusional. Yet a voice was heard from within the carriage as she said, "Then let us negotiate." Obviously, Hellion Sun Shui, the very least admitted Ling Han, was very capable at fleeing after he had managed to successfully escape from her once. Otherwise, she would have simply apprehended him for interrogation rather than give him a chance for a negotiation. Chapter 535, Leading into a Trap. Chapter 535, Leading into a Trap. Ling Han smiled faintly. He knew that she would definitely be willing to negotiate. "I have a few questions to ask your highness," he called out loudly. "Oh, then you should first answer one question of mine. Otherwise, there would be no further need for discussion." Hellion Sun Shui said calmly, "Is that vial in your possession?" "Indeed." Ling Han made no denial and said, "That's right. It is indeed in my possession." For a while, no further sound was heard from within the carriage. Mayhap Hellion Sun Shui was too excited by the news and was currently getting her emotions back under control. After a while, her voice was heard again. "All right, what do you want to know?" "How did your highness come to know about the matter of this vial?" Ling Han asked. "There are some things which are not appropriate for too many people to know. Let us switch to a different location for further discussion," Hellion Sun Shui said. Ling Han nodded and said, "All right, follow me, but not too close. Otherwise, if I get a scare, who knows, I may never appear again." Hellion Sun Shui gave a cold humph, obviously very displeased. Ling Han walked ahead, whilst the sea race followed behind. The direction that Ling Han took was naturally where the mine was located. If Hellion Sun Shui really made a move against him, then he'd lead them to the shaft and kill them with a trap. On the landmass, the members of the sea race were not very fast. Thankfully, though, the mine was not very far from the imperial city. As a result, in less than half an hour, they arrived at their destination. "Stop!" Hellion Sun Shui halted the advance of the carriage from afar and called out, "Human, is this place that ancient mine?" She had not been deceived. Ling Han stopped, then turned around and said, "That's right." A figure walked out of the carriage. However, her whole body was wrapped in multiple streaks of divine purple light, so there was no way to clearly see her appearance. One could not even see clearly if the figure was tall or short, man or woman. It was only faintly visible that the figure wore some kind of jade green clothing and had extremely long hair. "You all wait here," she commanded. "Yes, your highness." Everyone else strictly obeyed her order. Hellion Sun Shui walked towards Ling Han. She had enough assurance that as long as she was near enough to him, she could take Ling Han down directly and not give him any single bit of chance to escape via teleportation. "That's close enough," Ling Han said, smiling. Actually, with his divine sense, he could allow her to walk a bit closer, but there was no need to let her know his limits and trump cards. Hellion Sun Shui could not help but sigh internally. If she attacked from this distance, she only had a 30% chance. "Your Highness, you may speak now," Ling Han said. Hellion Sun Shui gave a soft humph. A mere flower blossom tear cultivator actually dared to behave as if he was on equal terms with her, which was something that made her feel very displeased. But for the sake of that vial, she suppressed her anger and said, "In truth, I was the one who deliberately leaked the information to Xian Kongyan." Ling Han was flabbergasted. Xian Kongyan was only a chess piece. Killing another with a cursed tool would leave no traces behind. No matter how bizarre the death had been, it would still be identified as natural death because there was absolutely no need for the killer to personally make a move. So how could it be possible that the game would be given away? But if one used a cursed tool, there was one clear fact. Either that the victim was too powerful and the user had no way of fighting him face to face, or it was possible that the victim's status was too unique and the user could not make a move right out in the open on him. Which category did Hellion Sun Shui belong to? Thus, when Xian Kongyan died so inconceivably, you immediately guessed that he must have been killed by the cursed tool, and so charged over here with your people, Ling Han deduced. That's right. If too much time had passed, you would have naturally fled. So how would I be able to find you again? Hellion Sun Shui said. Ling Han was curious and asked, You are at minimum a high-level heaven tier cultivator. You seek the curse tool. Could it be that you want to kill a shattering void tier cultivator? If this really could curse a shattering void tier cultivator to death, then what level would this jade vial be? A god tool. That is not something that you need to concern yourself with. Hellion Sun Shui humphed and said, This kind of treasure is not something that you can possess. Hand it over to me, and firstly, your safety will be guaranteed, and secondly, I can compensate you with a spirit tool. Oh, what kind of spirit tool? Is it as valuable as this one? Ling Han drew out the demon birth sword. Very obviously, Hellion Sun Shui's figure stiffened slightly. She had definitely seen through the level of the demon birth sword. That was a level 10 spirit tool. What could she produce that would move Ling Han? She had really underestimated this human. His wealth was really a bit shocking. She paused, then said, I am determined to get that vial, so I advise you to hand it over. If not, then even if you flee to the ends of the world, I will still find you. Ling Han smiled, then asked, Really? Are you sure that wherever I go you will follow? Hellion Sun Shui humphed coldly and was just about to begin boasting. But then something dawned on her as she looked ahead and said, So this is what you're relying on? To escape into the old mine? Naive, she said coldly. Now that the cursed tool has been withdrawn, the cursed chi in this place would begin to drop. And who am I? A member of the royal clan of the Northern Sea. My natal horoscope was decided by the gods. So how could I possibly be wounded by the cursed chi here? She was really quite at Sundra. Unfortunately, she had no idea what kind of changes had taken place here. Cursed chi was really nothing in comparison. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Then come chase after me. Who knows, if you manage to catch up to me, maybe I'll let you have it. Hee hee hee. He broke out into a run and fled into the old mine. Hellion Sun Shui did not know what he meant, but after a moment of thought, she was sure that it was not very possible that it was a compliment. Immediately, she gave a cold humph and followed him in. Ling Han moved recklessly and attacked madly. He wanted to draw out the 12 ancient corpses beneath the ground here. The lake of blood would do too. Of course, the silver spider was the ideal target. In short, whatever could suppress Hellion Sun Shui would do. And after this one battle, would any more sea race dare to come here? So you choose to do things the hard way. Hellion Sun Shui humphed coldly. With a palm strike, her origin power transformed into a beautiful, gigantic hand that pressed down towards Ling Han. The might of the palm strike had yet to hit him, but the terrifying pressure behind this blow had already caused cracks to appear all over Ling Han's body, and blood poured crazily from his wounds. One had to know that he had body of iron, sheet the toughness of his body was comparable to precious metal of the same level as he. But the mere pressure was enough to shatter his skin. If he really suffered a strike, what chance did he have at surviving it? What a damn powerful woman! Ling Han exclaimed in surprise and tossed out both arms. He threw out the 2 divine corpses. He did not plan to take them back. It should not be a bad option to bury these 2 divine corpses in here. There had to be a very powerful background behind the 12 ancient corpses, and they were definitely not inferior to these 2 divine corpses in his possession. Hellion Sun Shui halted. She arrived in front of the 2 divine corpses, and an expression of surprise appeared on her face that was not visible to anyone else. This is a divine corpse, she mumbled softly, and her expression of disbelief became even more pronounced. Ling Han actually had 2 divine corpses in his possession. This human was indeed very strange. However, the divinity of these 2 divine corpses had already been expended completely. Moreover, this was the mortal plane, and it had its own rules. A god-level elite cultivator was not that much stronger than a shattering void tier 1, and he wanted to use these 2 divine corpses to scare her into stopping. How naive! With a casual wave of her hand, she separated the 2 divine corpses. Since the essence of their divinity had been exhausted, they had lost whatever value they had. She couldn't be bothered to deal with them in that case. There is no way you can escape. Hellion Sun Shui declared icily. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Who said I wanted to escape?" He had arrived at the site where the cursed tool had been placed. With a single punch, a terrifying amount of origin power added with his own body's physical strength created a very scary amount of destructive power. Pung! A pillar of blood soared upwards. Chapter 536. Unable to withstand a single blow. Chapter 536. Unable to withstand a single blow. Hung! The pillar of blood soared skywards, and a terrible scene appeared. Multiple stars actually fell as if it was the end of the world. Ling Han did not hesitate in the slightest, and entered into the Black Tower at his first chance to dodge this calamity. The stench of blood permeated and blocked the divine sense from extending outside the body, and affected visibility as well. As a result, Hellion Sun Shui actually did not discover that Ling Han had disappeared at first, and still remained in the mine as she wanted to find Ling Han, subdue him, and snatch away the vial of curses. But it was only a mere instant. The ocean of blood soared skywards, its terrible might on full display. Hellion Sun Shui's expression changed drastically. With her cultivation level, she was naturally able to clearly detect how terrifying this bloody water was. She hurriedly shot upwards. She was sure that Ling Han had long since teleported out. Otherwise, how could it be possible that a mere flower blossom tier cultivator like him be able to withstand such terrifying might and power? It was too late. A blood-colored tsunami wave quickly formed. This time, the 12 undecayed corpses did not appear. However, the gigantic silver spider appeared, and a sacred, terrifying aura emanated from its mountain-sized body. It was really too powerful. Before, Ling Han merely took one look at it, and it almost caused his soul to fly away and scatter, and his physical body to burst, even though he possessed a sliver of divine sense of the heaven tier, and furthermore, had already formed the body of iron, sheath the toughness of his physical body was on par with precious metal of the same level. Ling Han was already so. What more when it was another? The army of sea race in the distance released terrible cries as their bodies exploded one after another. The giant silver spider's gaze swept over Hellion Sun Shui, and this time it did not simply shift its gaze like it was staring at a bug, but showed a hint of anger in its expression. A huge leg rose and pierced through the air towards Hellion Sun Shui. Even though Ling Han was hiding in the Black Tower, his expression changed drastically upon seeing this blow. It was too powerful, so powerful that it could even shoot down the stars in the skies. Hellion Sun Shui was completely unable to dodge. With a PU, her slender body was already pierced through. The spider's leg pierced through her body, and there were lingering traces of blood remaining on the spear-like silver limb. Pooh! Hellion Sun Shui threw up blood, but an immeasurable divine light flickered around her body which, too, was sacred and elegant and filled with an ancient air. The giant silver spider actually revealed a very human expression. It abruptly withdrew its limb, its size shrinking swiftly, then transformed into a silver light that shot into the waves. Furthermore, the waters, too, began to swiftly subside, and very quickly it had completely disappeared into the mine, as if the previous phenomenon had never happened. Except the army of the sea race had been turned into minced meat lying outside the mine, while Hellion Sun Shui had had her body pierced through. Ling Han exited the Black Tower, thinking that this place was really the perfect location to trap someone. Even a high-level Heaven Tier cultivator had practically been killed in an instant, and this had also allowed him to see the gap between the Heaven Tier and the Shattering Void Tier. Unable to withstand even a single strike, the higher one's level in martial arts, the larger the power gap would be between different cultivation levels. Even someone as powerful as Hellion Sun Shui was unable to fight back at all in the face of that giant silver spider. He flew towards Hellion Sun Shui, yet saw that the divine light that had surrounded this woman before had already disappeared and revealed her true face. She really was a beauty, with a fine nose and cherry lips. She had long, shapely eyebrows and skin as fair and smooth as jade. However, her eyes were tightly closed. Otherwise, they would have definitely added some further radiance to the level of her beauty. And on her left shoulder, there was a bloody hole. At this moment, blood was currently gushing out. It was obviously where the silver spider had pierced her through. Ling Han was astonished. Hellion Sun Shui was actually not dead, though none of her vital spots had been hit. With the power of the giant silver spider, if one was pierced through, the attack would explode inside one's body, and the destructive power of such a blow would be enough to destroy everything. From the look of things, the giant silver spider had obviously been merciful. Ling Han's gaze swept over her, and instantly his killing intent rose. This woman was too dangerous. Moreover, she wanted the vial of curses in his possession, and would obviously not give up until she had gotten hold of it. He definitely could not leave this future trouble alive. Ling Han drew out the demon birth sword. Having compassion for the fairer sex depended on the situation. To be soft-hearted to one's enemy would be equivalent to be irresponsible for oneself, one's family and friends. He did not hesitate and struck out with a slash. Whoa! A halo of light emanated from Hellion Sun Shui's body and transformed into a protective layer which blocked the attack of the demon birth sword. Fuck! Ling Han sensed it slightly and discovered that this halo of light originated from the necklace worn around Hellion Sun Shui's neck. To be more accurate, it should have come from the pendant hung on the necklace. Previously, when the giant silver spider released a severe blow, this pendant shone too, and made the giant silver spider be merciful and not erase Hellion Sun Shui. Now, it had managed to block Ling Han's fatal attack. From the look of things, this was an automatic defensive spirit tool. However, the giant silver spider was too powerful, so powerful that the spirit tool did not even have the time to activate. And in comparison, Ling Han was much too weak, which was why this spirit tool could so easily block his attack. Annoying. Ling Han bared his teeth. At first, he had thought that he would be entirely worthy of being recognized as the strongest person in the North region. Who would have foreseen that he would be even more helpless than he was in the desolate North? At least there, everyone would have to respectfully address him as Grandmaster Ling, but what about now? Did the identity of a Heaven-tier alchemist have any effect or influence on Hellion Sun Shui or the giant silver spider? He was dissatisfied and threw out a few more strikes. He even made use of sword chi, but the defensive ability of that halo of light was really too strong. No matter what he did, it was absolutely useless. Ling Han did everything he could think of, but it was still useless. He had even wanted to draw her into the Black Tower. In that way, whether he killed her would no longer matter, as it would be enough to suppress this princess of the sea race for the rest of her life. However, that immeasurable divine light similarly stopped Ling Han's divine sense from wrapping around her. In short, even though Hellion Sun Shui appeared to be in a coma at this moment, it was as if she had become a porcupine which he couldn't even touch. He did not make any further move, and that pendant no longer shone. Hellion Sun Shui's bright as moonlight, beautiful face and long, slender body was revealed. Ling Han swept one look over her and mumbled with much malice, "Flat chest." Actually, it was not really that flat, but in comparison with Lu Yutong, Li Xichan, and Zhu Xianer, who were well developed to a shocking level, she was naturally on a much more inferior level. The shocking thing was that the wound on her left shoulder healed very quickly, and the blood had already stopped seeping out. The wound slowly began to scab over. One had to know that this wound was created by a supreme creature, and the martial intent of the giant silver spider had been left behind in this wound. As long as this martial intent was still present, it would have been impossible for the wound to heal. And how long could the martial intent of a shattering, void tear cultivator last? Millennia. Hellion Sun Shui should not have the ability to disperse the martial intent of the shattering void tear. It should have been the giant silver spitter in the instant it withdrew its limb. It withdrew its martial intent as well. As a result, though Hellion Sun Shui appeared to be wounded very severely, only a hole had been pierced through in her shoulder. The reason she fell unconscious was because she, too, had suffered the barrage of the martial intent of a shattering, void tear cultivator. With her divine sense, she was definitely not able to withstand it. This also meant that she could possibly awaken at any moment. Fuck, and he actually came so close to her. Ling Han's heart shivered. Since he was not able to kill this princess of the sea race, then his only option would be to flee and let her just come to hunt him down in the middle state. But it was too late. Hellion Sun Shui's eyelids trembled lightly, and she opened her eyes. What a beautiful woman! She actually possessed a pair of sea-blue eyes, and matched with her jade-like fair skin, fine, straight nose, and clear-cut features. She had the charm that belonged to one from a foreign land. "Who are you?" She looked at Ling Han in confusion, then looked down at herself. "And who am I?" She had lost her memory.